Welcome in to the first ever PFF Watch Along. Steve Palazzolo here with my friends from PFF. Here's what we're doing. We're watching Super Bowl 49. Sorry, already messed it up. Patriots and Seahawks from the 2014 season because our good friends over at the NFL have made Game Pass, NFL Game Pass free. So you guys can go to NFL.com right now, go find Game Pass, and you can watch any NFL game basically back to 2009. So we're going to go to the 2014 season, find the Super Bowl, Patriots, Seahawks, and then I'll give you a countdown in a couple minutes. We'll press click, we'll press play, and then boom, there we go. The game starts. We'll all watch it together. We're also going to be giving away one of PFF's #1 subscriptions. It's PFF Edge, and you can earn that free subscription if you're the first one to tweet at PFF right now and let us know who are the highest graded players in the first half for both teams, Patriots and Seahawks, at Super Bowl 49. Let us know who are the highest graded players, and we'll be announcing winners. We'll have other contests as we go. So now to introduce the other guys here, we have Sam Monson, we have Dr. Eric Eager, and I believe Chris Collinsworth is lurking around somewhere doing something cool over there, but I don't see him right now.
Just trying out a new slide for this year, Just
there he is.
You can overshoot the runway, though. That's the problem. Get on wheels here. This is not going to be good at all. So
it's the off season for everyone.
We got our own TV show here. We're just parasiting off NFL property. I love it. That's great.
Parasiting on Periscope. It's great. So, Chris, we got to work on the. It's the off season. You got some time, but Chris, this was one of the Super Bowls that you got to call. All sorts of controversial calls and various things going on. What do you remember about Super Bowl 49?
Obviously the end, that was just so insane, right? Malcolm Butler with the interception. I still think it was the greatest call Al Michaels has ever made, other than do you believe in miracles? Because I was watching the field when he made that interception. And I can tell you, I had absolutely no idea what happened. I knew there was a collision. I knew Al was screaming. I knew the crowd was going berserk. I didn't know if it was a touchdown. I didn't know if it was an interception. I didn't know if it was an incompletion. And Al Michaels, the minute those two bodies collided, said, Malcolm Butler, just went crazy on the thing. But I think and I hope that at the end of the game, we'll get a chance to go back all the way through that. Because the decision, I've talked it over with Pete Carroll, I've talked it over with Darrell Bevel, Bill Belichick, all the different things that went into that game and that decision, and it was just remarkable. Everybody in the house, I think, after Marshawn Lynch ran it from the 5 down to the 1, was thinking, well, doesn't take a genius to figure out what's coming next, right? They're just going to give it to him again. But there's a lot of things that went into that decision, and hopefully we'll go through some of that at the end of the tape.
Oh, I suspect it'll come up. I'm a big fan of choosing this game, though, because for the first time, we get to critique Chris's job performance, not the other way around. I think that should be some fun. Obviously, we got to, can't go too hard. Otherwise, some of us might not make it out of the broadcast with a job.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Just, it's all about finding the right line here. I'm interested in this game, though, because I don't remember much of it at all. This was at the end of the first season PFF did a full season of college grading. So January that year was affectionately termed Hell Month at PFF. We were just hammering through these college games one after another all the way through the week, all the way through that month. So I can't tell you an awful lot about what happened in this game, but I can tell you every detail about Eastern Michigan against Middle Tennessee State, which is seared into my brain because that was the last game I did that day that ended 10 p.m. the night before the Super Bowl, working through some sketchy tape that was hellish trying to navigate. So I'm excited to watch this game and find out what actually happened before that final play.
And look at you now.
Yeah. Yeah, this is pre-PFF for me, and I think what's interesting is that, we all thought this was going to be a coronation of the next dynasty in the NFL. Seattle had taken down Peyton Manning the year before, take down Tom Brady in this game, and, it's the next great team. And, what ended up happening here is what really the Seahawks kind of are now, which is Russell Wilson carrying the team on its back, because of some injuries, but also other things. Seattle didn't bring any drafted receivers into this game. They didn't have a lot of support for Russell Wilson, and he went toe-to-toe with Tom Brady at Tom Brady's best near the end of the game, and that's been kind of an omen for what we've seen over the last half a decade.
Yeah, so many stories coming into this game. I mean, the Patriots picked up Darrelle Revis for this one season. Brady and Belichick hadn't won a Super Bowl in 10 years. Everybody's asking, is this the Patriots dynasty going to continue? Is the Seahawks dynasty going to begin? And of course, Deflategate. And Chris, you guys had to touch on that. You had to touch on it right at the top, I think, right? And that was a big thing leading up to these 2 weeks. Deflategate after the AFC Championship was the news, the sports news for a couple weeks leading up to the game.
Yeah, there's nothing we like more than having controversy going into a Patriots game so we can ask Bill and Robert Kraft and Tom about it. That worked out really well for us. But you had to do it. It was the elephant in the room. It was only a few weeks old. And so, I mean, I especially with Brady, I swear I'm like within 3 feet of the guy, and I'm looking at him trying to stare a hole through him. And I said, all right, Tom, you got to answer this question now because I've got to go on and say something here. I said, did you have anything to do with deflating the balls? No. Did you say anything that might have been interpreted as having something to do with deflating those balls? No. Would you have ever given a look or a nod of your head or anything that would have made those guys think that what you wanted was for them to deflate those friggin' footballs? And he said, Chris, I mean, he was as strong as I was trying to be to him. He was right back in my face. And so was Kraft and so was Belichick. But it was about as raw going into that game as any game I can ever remember doing.
All right, so many storylines. We'll discuss it throughout. We'll have a good time watching it, and we want you to join us now. Remember, you guys can tweet at PFF with your guess. Who are the highest graded players in the first half? PFF Edge subscription is on the line, featuring the PFF Draft Guide. Over 1,100 pages. I cannot believe it's over 1,100 pages. It's incredible. It's all part of the Edge subscription, so go and check it out or win it by tweeting the top graded players in the first half. So right now, we are at NFL.com. Game Pass, the Twitter account might be tweeting this out for you guys to make sure you're in the right area. And there's a few different ways to watch it. We want the full game, and we're going to click it. We're going to see a picture of the Grand Canyon, and we're all going to watch it together. So I'm going to count down. We'll give you some time to get there. Count down from 10. Sam, Eric, Chris will all click play at the same time. Ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's press play on Game Pass. Everybody see the Grand Canyon? We there?
It's beautiful.
Looking good. Now we're just going to have Chris call the game for the rest of the time, right? Chris, you do play-by-play.
Already can't even get the thing to play, so there we go. I'm rolling. Good thing
a lot of pressure
there's going to be...
There we go.
Oh, you hear it. We're going to have a ticker going as well, I believe, so everybody can keep track. And if you lose your spot, kind of come back with us. But, yeah, we'll just be talking in general about everything leading up to this. Patriots are going to receive Danny Amendola. Everybody seeing Danny?
Marshawn Lynch diving into the Skittles. There you go.
A lot of pressure
beautiful
on the Patriots here. Haven't won a Super Bowl in a decade. Kind of fun to think about.
Yeah, we touched on it at the top. Seattle is coming off of a 2013 where they destroy the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl. Russell Wilson's in his third season. They're back in the Super Bowl. I mean, this really looks like Seattle's going to take over. And, oh, by the way, we have a special guest showing up in the fourth quarter who is not too happy with the way this game turned out for Seattle.
There was definitely a period, though, where the Patriots – the shine was starting to come off them. People were asking, were they really this clutch? Did they kind of get, I don't want to say get lucky, but did they benefit from a few things swinging their way for those early Super Bowls? And now we're just seeing that they're actually human along with everybody else. And then this was what kind of swung it back in their direction.
Well, they lost, I think, week 4. They lost to Kansas City on Monday Night Football that year, about 41-14 or something like that. And that was the we're on to Cincinnati thing. But they were 2-2. You wrote the article about Brady being washed. It was really like a pivot point for the second dynasty for New England.
Why we got to bring that up again, Eric? Huh?
It's only the first time tonight.
Yeah, but we've done rehearsals and things. I feel like it's going to be a theme throughout this game.
Got to throw that in Sam's face.
So tell me exactly where you guys are on the game right now. Is the Tom Brady graphic up, or you already past that?
Yeah, Tom Brady
Graphic's coming up right here. 6th start in the Super Bowl.
All right, so
Man, this could be the last one.
This really could. I mean, Garoppolo's in the fold.
Yeah. Yes, this was not spoiler alert. This was Jimmy Garoppolo's first Super Bowl ring in this game.
He's a multiple time Super Bowl participant.
Certainly is.
Multiple teams. There's a missed tackle by Sherman, a la the Super Bowl this past year.
I'm sure he was in the DMs after that.
Trying to get.
Seattle
was hurt coming into this game, wasn't it?
That's right. It was a shoulder. I think it was an elbow injury from the NFC Championship game. You're right, Chris.
Seattle's defense really had not given up anything to anybody in 2 years, essentially.
Yeah.
They had one game against the Chargers where Phillip Rivers played pretty well. I mean, that was it, though.
I remember Sherman made a nice tackle on a crosser on a 3rd and long against the Packers, and his arm was limp the week before. And so him playing in this game, he was injured.
The other thing that was really interesting is this was the contrast of offenses between the Patriots and Denver's offense, right? Because as dominant as the Seahawks defense is, there was a blueprint to attack them. You just had to be patient enough to beat them with 1,000 paper cuts. And I think, honestly, in NFL history, the Patriots offense might be the best at that, at just taking 4 yards every single play if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think going into this game, they were scared to death of trying to pass protect against Seattle. You just forget how dominant Michael Bennett had been and was in this game as well in a losing cause. So, I mean, effectively the first quarter, or the feeling out rounds, if you will, for this heavyweight fight, it was a lot of runs. It was really quick passes. I'll bet you Brady didn't hold the ball over 2.1, 2.2 seconds for a pass the entire first half. And the one time he did, Michael Bennett hit him right in the face, and he threw an interception.
You guys can follow along with the ticker up top as well, too, making sure you're synced up. Chris, if you want to sync it up, everybody, if you want to sync it up, just check the ticker.
Oh, yeah, I could use a little sync it up here.
Yeah,
it's interesting how Seattle built their defense, right? Because, Sherman, Chancellor, Earl, put a decent amount of investment there. And then Averill and Bennett were 1 year, $5 million deals, each one, it seemed like at the time, which is kind of an interesting look at how we think now about coverage and pass rush.
So we're in the middle of free agency right now. In that offseason, our top 2 edge defenders in free agency were Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett. Those are the 2 guys they brought in. And the Patriots bring in Brandon LaFell, Darrelle Revis. I mean, there were some legitimate moves that, fueled this matchup in this one.
The Michael Bennett free agent contract is still insane. He was a good player that somebody let walk for the sake of a 1 year, $5 million deal. I mean, even back then, that was a steal. Obviously, now it would be even more ridiculous, but it's amazing that he ended up being allowed to walk to Seattle for that price.
Yeah. I always thought it was because everybody was tilted by how bad Michael Bennett, the running back, was.
This was a really big play. Are you guys on the running into the kicker call?
Yeah.
So they blew this call. I remember I was like, because you're in the Super Bowl and it's the first quarter, and I go, I'd like to wait at least one quarter before I say something really stupid. But I was like, I know if you hit the plant leg, that's 15 yards. That's not 5 yards. And so I said it gently, just in case I was wrong. And but we did get it confirmed during the commercial break that should have been a 15-yard penalty, and they should have kept the ball.
When did they? When was the change in that rule from the sort of 5 to the 15-yard? When did they make the distinction?
I think it all had to do with, like, none of the kickers cared that it was, if they hit their leg that was in the air. Obviously, what you care about is the plant leg, right? Same thing with field goals, and same thing with everything else. I don't know why they missed that. Vinovich is a really good official, but they did, and it ended up not being a big deal, but it was definitely a heck of a call.
I wonder if we'll ever get to a time, because there used to be 2 different types of face masks, right? 5 and 15, and now you wonder if they're going to just shrink them all down to 15-yard penalties, or maybe something in between, like a 10-yard penalty. But the weirdness is the distinction, right? Like, what is a roughing and what is it running into?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it at this point. It's if they hit the plant leg or the leg that's still on the ground, that's going to be 15. If they hit the other leg, it's going to be 5. But I'm kind of with you. The other thing that I would really like to see change, if they ever made me commissioner for 20 minutes, I would like to just get paid like that for a little while. But B, I would really like to see holding penalties become a 5-yard penalty. I mean, who are we kidding? All we're doing now is trying to protect quarterbacks anyway. I mean, who cares if you hold? Like, okay, that equates more to offsides. There's some benefit to the league if the offensive linemen are holding, because they're not getting their quarterback killed.
I think the only thing that people will come back to is that, some of these offenses, the only way you can stop them is if they make a mistake, like holding, right? And if it's only 5 yards, like how much would the Chiefs ever actually punt?
Yeah. That's kind of what the league wants, right? It wants to turn this thing into all offense all the time.
That's true. I think, that there are some teams that, like, the only time you can ever stop them is if they decide to run on 2nd down and long and they call for holding.
Right.
Big 3rd down stop there. And if you guys watch Hightower just explode into the line of scrimmage, this was like their game plan. If you watch too, they were trying to make Marshawn cut back. And I remember Hightower just blowing things up left and right, letting Jamie Collins go and make plays. They did a really nice job bottling him up for the most part this game. That Seattle's trying to establish that run, Eric.
Yeah, Wolfork with holding the point of attack down pretty well as well.
This was the season where Marshawn Lynch set all kinds of records in terms of broken tackles. 88 in the regular season was the most we'd ever seen. 117, including the playoffs, which is by far the most we've ever seen in terms of broken tackles. Like, he was an absolute machine in terms of just plowing through. It's what, again, it falls into the whole, should they have given it to him on the 1-yard line at the end, because the guy was so hard to stop all season long.
Yeah.
He's an amazing guy. I love the phrase that they gave us before this game, or one of the games, that he's a split-legged runner. I'd never heard that before. And if you watch him run, his legs are always about 4 feet apart. And so you just can't hit both legs at the same time. And he just plows his way. And he's got that quick first step too. I mean, most of the great runs that I ever saw live calling a game were by Marshawn Lynch. I mean, he occasionally was not going to be tackled.
The other way I heard his running style described is that every step he takes is sideways, even when he's running in a straight line towards you. Like, he's always got both legs out like that. Yeah, it's every step is like a cut.
If whoever has the volume on the game, can we turn that down a touch? I think it's tough for our listeners to hear, our beautiful analysis on top of the game here.
All right.
Beautiful.
Well, can't hear the analysts otherwise. I must have my things all switched around. So that was on me. My apologies.
I mean, I would want to hear Chris call it too, but we're stuck with us tonight going through the game.
It's It's interesting.
It's a short
It's interesting here. When does this game evolve from a blunt game to a Shane Vereen game? I think they try, as you said, Chris, to feel out the Seattle Seahawks, but I think eventually it almost goes entirely to a Shane Vereen. I think he gets like a dozen targets in this game. Yeah,
He does.
Well, it was kind of the start of those Super Bowl runs, right, that we saw in the future with running back James White and some of those other guys being able to do it. But really what they do is they really try to, and I described it in the game at one point as, you know, how like you just clear a zone for Kobe Bryant or Magic Johnson or whatever, and then let one of those guys work one-on-one. And that's exactly what they did. So they would just split tight ends and running backs and wide receivers in all different directions. But all they really wanted to do was to get like a Bobby Wagner one-on-one with Shane Vereen, and he could do whatever he wanted to do. They didn't even care. It was like, is it just a choice route? And you go down there and you break in, break out. They didn't make any difference. So they were really just trying to create space because I think they knew in their hearts they weren't going to be able to block these guys. So their game plan was to run it. They were going to try and run it 30, 35 times in the game and just get that sucker out as fast as they possibly could. And it really, the opening drive, they go right down the field until he throws the interception to Jeremy Lane when Bennett hit him on that on the little loop. So you forget how many great players were in this game too. You know, I mean, just some of the matchups and really fun.
The
to
two
watch.
games. Sorry, the two playoff games leading up to this could not have been any different for New England, too. They beat Baltimore with literally zero running game. Their running backs had like 6 or 7 carries. Brady threw the ball over 50 times. Then they beat the Colts 45-7. Blunt has 150 yards. It's in the rain. They run the ball like crazy. I mean, they're one of those teams that just completely adjust. So, you know, Eric, you're like, hey, this was a Shane Vereen game. Like, they can really adjust to what the defense is given and just kind of morph into what they need to be for that particular night.
You know, this is one of the teams that Belichick really had a ton of respect for. And it kind of played its way out at the end of the game. One of his lines to me before the game was, these guys will fight for every ounce of turf, every inch of turf out there on every given play, no matter if the game's over or not. And of course, one of the real memorable parts of the game was after the interception, the Patriots still had the ball down on the 1 or 2 yard line, right? They had to at least snap it a couple of times without, you wonder what they were going to do, what their strategy was and the whole thing. But you remember there was a big fight that broke out after one of those, which was a take a knee play. But it really played itself out that, fighting for every, I mean, they never, ever, ever were going to quit. I mean, you got to give them credit. The mentality of that Seattle defense and the pride of that Seattle defense was overwhelming.
What is Bill like in those meetings, Chris? I mean, not whatever you can give away, but what's he like in those meetings? Because everybody sees him in front of the media where he doesn't like to talk about anything. Does he give you guys interesting things to look at?
Depends on which day of the week it is. I mean, seriously, I have no idea. We go in there and sometimes he's mad as a hornet and won't want to say anything. One time we flexed into a Patriot road game. So instead of playing at 1 o'clock on the road and maybe the West Coast, I can't remember where we were. That they had to play a night game, which meant instead of getting home at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, they were going to get home at 6 a.m. and screw up his work week. And I mean, he barely talked to us that day. He was just mad as a hornet, unbelievable. And sometimes he's my favorite coach to talk with. I mean, there are times that I've had conversations, both private and otherwise, in those meetings that he's. As long as you do your homework, like if he knows that you know and that you're actually, you care. Like one meeting I said something to him, he was talking, I said, can you just go down your couple of your defensive linemen. And he goes, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what about this guy? I can't remember who it was now. And I said, he kind of swings right between tackle and end. And he goes, no. And he kind of like scoffed and no, he's a tackle. And I go, okay. I said, in the last game, he wasn't just the tackle. He played in. So he didn't say anything. He just went on and kind of came back. And I swear it must have been 5 minutes later. And he was like, he just stopped the whole conversation. He went, that sucker played one play at end, didn't he? I said, yeah. I go, he did. So I think from that, they're like baby steps that you have to take, right? You just kind of have to kind of keep going with them, keep doing your homework. But he's a football guy. Like he would love hanging out with you guys. And you guys live this stuff. You're doing it every single day. And if he sat in that room in there and talked to you guys, I mean, he would love it. He would absolutely love it.
Yeah. There's a Humau Nui, the star of the divisional round by playing he was a ineligible tackle. Right, Steve?
Yeah, in the Baltimore game. Yeah, they broke that out in the second half, and Chris had to explain the rules on the air about all that as well.
And now he gets to play wide receiver and catch hitches.
That was the most outrageous. I was sitting there going, because they lined up in that bizarre formation that nobody even knew what the heck was going on. And it led to a rule change, right? Didn't they change that you had to, forget what it is now, you had to declare yourself eligible as a receiver too, or something, that they weren't going to let you do multiple shifts and do all the things that some rule change came out of that.
Yeah, there was it's still true that if you are ineligible and you switch, you have to come out of the game, which is like detrimental for like a guard who plays fullback, but it's less so when it's like your second string running back. And like Bill Belichick just knowing that rule and like screwing with it is pretty funny. And there's Jeremy Lane.
The rules, it's up to the league to make the rules that people can't go attack. This was a sad part of the game, this Jeremy Lane getting hurt after that huge interception. But that was the play where Brady, after really a perfect drive. That drive was exactly what they were trying to do on that opening drive. Short throws, a lot of runs, and then you see Tom make one of those kind of mistakes, once or twice a year.
Well, and I think here he not only breaks his arm but also tears his knee up.
I think he did. I think he did both.
Yeah.
Well,
and there was and then
game that he was.
What was that?
Steve, lay it up. He was in the top 5 guy or something.
What Sam said?
Brady.
Sam. It was Sam.
Sam did that.
It was in the offseason. Yeah,
Yeah.
the offseason before this season, I wrote a piece that said Tom Brady is no longer a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, which, to be fair, a lot of the evidence was saying he might not be, or at least was borderline. The problem was that after that Kansas City game in week 4 that Eric talked about, it was kind of like, wrote a piece that was sort of like, well, here, look, this is what I'm talking about. Here he played terribly. Everything's going badly. I already told you that he wasn't a top 5 quarterback. And, I didn't exactly say I was right, but I was definitely leaning in that direction. And then basically from that moment onwards, he became like the greatest stretch of quarterback play we've ever seen for like 4 years. And wasn't really done,
We're all so wrong so many times. It's like, if you don't pat yourself on the back occasionally, who will, right?
Right, exactly. So you have to take that chance. Only it turned out that that was all he needed to completely reverse everything and go back to being the best ever.
Wilson's scrambling already. I'm always interested in how Belichick plays mobile quarterbacks because, they're just so cautious with their pass rush. They want to stay in their pass lanes probably a little bit more than most teams. And it felt like they were just it's like they don't even always want to get pressure. They just want to really, keep them contained, compress the pocket a little bit. And you could see, I remember even in the sound effects, all the, post-game quotes and things, the mic'd up version, you hear Belichick saying, keep your pad level and all that. So that's always interesting too, watching Belichick's teams against these guys.
I'm going to go off brand here. That was a hell of a run by Lynch.
Right. Lynch getting 5 when there was maybe
absolutely
one there.
Dragged. they stoned him, and he just drags people for 4, 5, 6 yards.
That's what he did.
There's not a whole lot else you can do against the run than this, and that's pretty.
They never had great run blocking. He would get contacted, at the line of scrimmage and find a way to get 4 or 5 pretty often.
Yeah, that was great. Now here,
but it really became amazing. I mean, it took a play to Chris Matthews to get Seattle going. I don't think they had a completed pass in this game until about midway through the second quarter or something. I mean, it was something insane.
Yeah. They had a first down or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many guys in this game that between Chris Matthews and Jeremy Lane and Malcolm Butler, and I mean, all these guys that you just are like, there's no way that guy's factoring into the game, right? Chris Matthews does hardball. He doesn't play football. And he comes out and he makes this unbelievable catch and kind of gets the whole thing jump-started. And it was just – it was a really interesting opening, sort of not that exciting kind of way of starting, and then it just sort of exploded from there.
Total on this game was 47.5. Through one quarter, the underbettors probably felt pretty good.
Patriots didn't score a point in the Super Bowl, I don't think, until like their 7th Super Bowl with Brady, something ridiculous like that.
A first
Philadelphia
quarter point.
Yeah, first quarter.
And even then, that game, because we liked the over in that game. That game was a little bit slow to go for New England, and then much like the Carolina Super Bowl, it just exploded at the ends of halves.
What goes into picking a Super Bowl tie, Chris? I mean, it's the Super Bowl. It's got to be your best tie,
That's
right?
a hell of a choice.
That's when I am no longer allowed to make that choice.
That's good.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's a whole meeting somewhere about Chris's tie, and he just gets handed it before the broadcast.
Fox was the best. Fox had us all like they still do it. Do you ever watch the Fox pregame show where they have like everybody has a green, one has a green tie and a green little hanky, and one has a red one and a red little hanky and all that kind of stuff. And believe me, the dudes that were on that show when I was on it, none of them ever bought a hanky in their life. I was like, we look ridiculous up here. There's just none of us dress like this. Surely America knows that.
Revis doing,
and then you had Jimmy Johnson doing his hair though. Like Jimmy Johnson did his own hair. Yes.
No question about it. No question about it. They had 4 makeup artists in there and like hairstylists and all. It was unbelievable. NBC, like we had one. Katy Perry was good this halftime too. She was good. Did I ever tell you I was on the Tonight Show with her one time?
No, really. Did not know that.
Strong, yeah, it was strong. She was, she was great. That was back. I swear, I think I had 6 followers on Twitter or something, and my kids had just talked me into it, and I was hating it, and they were making fun of me because I was answering everybody back. Anytime somebody said something to me, they go, "Dad, you don't answer them back every time somebody makes a comment to you, whatever." So Katy Perry on the Tonight Show said something about social media, and she goes, "Do you have social media?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Okay, all my followers, hit Chris up with, and they gave the whatever it was. She's got like 50 million followers or something. It was like for like half an hour, the most insane social media moment of all time for me. So it was fun.
Were you early enough that you hadn't yet turned off notifications? Did your phone just like explode when that happened? Because there's a point like in all of our Twitter growths where you have to kill the notifications, otherwise you're just getting like hammered from something.
Yeah, I probably turned it off after the Philadelphia game, I would think, but I'm not sure.
We'll watch that one next, Chris.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Thorold Simon in for Jeremy Lane, and they had to put Byron Maxwell in the slot. So that's a sneaky big change in this game.
Right.
Not
and
a whole
by
lot of
contrast,
experience.
on the other side, you
Not a
got
whole lot of
Revis.
experience there for Simon.
Right. In the contrast, you got Revis on the other side doing what made him special, right? Which is actually following the top receiver to the slot when he's the best corner there. You know, we saw him before locking down Doug Baldwin one-on-one. There's almost no top shadow corners that follow people to the slot. And Revis did that in multiple different teams.
Was this during the beef between Sherman and Revis? This was during that beef, right?
Did they have one back then, or was that just recent stuff?
I want to say there was. I think Sherman even like makes fun of Revis during this game, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, it was two completely different schemes. The Pats defense, Revis would always match up against the best route runner. They had Brandon Browner to face the bigger receivers. Kyle Arrington was a good slot corner. Patrick Chung covering tight ends. Jamie Collins and Dante Hightower in the middle. Like they had answers to every matchup weapon on the other side. And this was right when Belichick started to get back to man coverage around these couple of years here. And that's why it worked so well.
Logan Ryan, I think, was a slot player. But then he ended up, I think he played outside in this game out of necessity and taken care of a little bit.
Yeah,
when they see Gronk 101, a one-on-one, they're taking shots.
Yeah, they hit a touchdown later on in this game, right?
Yeah.
When they had Chancellor out there matched up.
Yeah.
They played man
Gronk
later on.
Don't you miss having Gronk in the NFL? He just kind of, I don't know. It was like no matter what else was happening in New England, there was always some comedic relief going on there.
So this is also he came into the league in 2010. 2011 he got hurt in the AFC Championship, was hurt in the Super Bowl. 2012 they lost him in the AFC Championship, I think. 2013 he didn't play in the AFC Championship. This was the first year he was healthy since his rookie year, and he was obviously a huge part of their offense.
I think he ended up being the only non-quarterback to play every snap in this game on offense. You just kind of the do everything player for the Patriots.
Sounds right. Yeah. Tim Wright in motion. They traded for him for Logan Mankins to start the season.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot about Tim Wright. Didn't he have like 6 touchdowns in this season?
Yeah, I think he had a couple in the on to Cincinnati game, but it was just it was like wide open stuff. Yeah, he had at least one in the Cincinnati game, and
sort of the classic. Like, was it Robert Royal used to be like where you'd have like 7 catches and 5 touchdowns in a season or something, just like little play action goal line stuff. Those were the days.
Simon already getting exposed.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to get it right here too. I think if this isn't the touchdown, we're close.
It was interesting.
I was just going to say it really changed the game. It just really did. You just can't go second and third, corners down the list. And when they were already kind of banged up, Chancellor was hurting this thing as it was, and Earl Thomas was coming off an injury. Lane gets hurt right off the bat, so it was tough. It was tough for these guys. Sherman was hurt coming into it.
Yeah.
Well, that was like we did that research 2-3 weeks ago where we basically said that it's like the 5th or 6th best cover player on a team determines the fate of the team in a game, which is sort of exactly what you said here. It doesn't matter necessarily how good Sherman is if the other team can just pick on the second string guy who's in. Sort of an interesting question of depth versus superstars.
I mean, I think Baldwin caught one pass in this game against Revis for a touchdown. It was like a touchdown, 3-yard touchdown or something. But I mean, these quarterbacks, why in the heck would they go against superstar cornerbacks? There's 4 other ones out there they can go pick on.
Yeah. This was the year. So LaFell had a pretty good year in 14. And then he came back in 15 and couldn't catch a thing.
Couldn't catch. He was really when again, when people were writing Brady off, he had pretty bad playmakers in 2013, a hurt Gronk, and then when they did start to figure it out in 2014, it was LaFell's emergence, right? I mean, Gronk was healthy, Edelman was there, but then they had that other option, which was LaFell, and then the running backs out of the backfield. The Patriots' offense always seemed to work well when they at least had that third guy when they needed him, and LaFell was perfect at that in 2014.
Well, I think what it kind of shows is, or what last year showed, is how sort of fragile all of that always was, right? It was that you usually had two guys. You had Edelman and you had Gronkowski, and then they were able to patch together a third guy because those two were so good and could do most of the heavy lifting. And then last year, all you got to do is take away Gronk, and suddenly the whole house of cards kind of comes down, because honestly, they probably could have gotten a Brandon LaFell season out of one of the guys on the roster last year had you had a healthy Gronkowski there and an Edelman, and the two of them kind of taking all the attention. But without the main guy and with Brady just a little bit on the decline, that group just couldn't hold its head above water.
How important are these tight ends right now in the league? Gronk goes out, then they're no good. You got the two best tight ends in football playing in the Super Bowl. Kittle is sort of the new Gronk, right, with the way he can block and the way that he's doing things. And even Kelsey, Kelsey is never going to be an inline blocker, but he's one of the better open field blockers. So you don't block him on a defensive end, but you put him in space and against a linebacker or a safety, he can hang in there pretty good. There's Chandler Jones, right, that comes around. Forgot that he was on this team.
Well, and you even think about like Philadelphia didn't have an NFL receiver on their roster second half of the year, and Zach Ertz is good enough to sort of help them overcome that to a degree. I think you're right that the interesting thing about the NFL now is how few tight ends there are. A decade ago, you had Gates, you had Graham, you had the group was growing, and I think now the group is relatively small. But if you have one of those elite guys, it really does change the complexion of your offense.
Yeah, we're running out of them, right? I mean, it felt like Ben Watson could barely move last year, and Jimmy Graham can still barely move. There's all these old, slow tight ends still lurking around the league, and then you have a guy like Austin
can't play anymore, really.
Witten. Austin Hooper's just okay, making crazy money because everybody just wants a tight end, and it's not a great tight end draft class from what we've seen either. So yeah, it's an interesting.
There's probably not a first rounder in the group.
Steve, I don't think you should keep that comment private.
They were showing Russell Wilson's accolades. He has been drafted in the Major League Baseball draft twice, which is more than me. I have been eligible for 4,500 selections in the Major League Baseball draft and not been drafted once. So Wilson's better than me at that too.
What was the highest you made it in baseball?
AAA for a couple of years. So I was close.
That's good. You're a player.
Undrafted to AAA. Don't mock me, Sam.
That's a lot of undrafted.
And 2 days in the Major League bullpen in spring training. That was my big league experience. There's Logan Ryan.
Logan Ryan with some good coverage.
Who is the guy that when you were standing in the bullpen just talking it up with him that you just were like acting like a little kid?
When I was in just being around the guys?
Yeah, who was it that kind of intimidated you and you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here with him?
Well, Buster Posey with the Giants, he became National League MVP. It was more like, here's this kid who's so much better than me, and he's on his way, and I'm fighting for everything. But he's just naturally really, really good, and he knows it, and he was confident, and pretty much fresh out of college, already in AAA, going to get called up pretty soon. So yeah, he was pretty legit.
He didn't have your hair though.
No, not at all.
The only pitcher in Major League Baseball that had Steve's hair was Sidney Ponson.
Come on, Eric. Stop with the Sidney Ponson jokes.
So far, I don't think that the Seahawks have completed a pass yet. We're still going on that currently.
I have either.
And New England's moving the ball.
They didn't set a record, though. I remember it was right before, if they had made it past the 5-minute mark of this quarter, that would have been a Super Bowl record. But they completed one right before that.
New England's moving the ball, but Brady threw that interception. I mean, they're really dominating the game essentially, but it's only a 7-point game at this point.
Yeah, I think if you're a Pats fan and let's say the game got away from them, you could easily look at the first quarter and a half and say you just missed a huge opportunity, right? The fact that Seattle's even in this game is the product of just a couple plays.
Yeah, really, there was the interception, then there was the Chris Matthews long completion that set up Seattle's touchdown, but really there just weren't, you take those two big plays out of the mix for the Patriots, and they're completely dominated this half.
Yeah, you look at this 7-0 through the first quarter and a half. If you bet the under in this game, you're feeling pretty good. But there's a lot of game left.
This is the one they all ran into each other, I think.
Oh, and then
he just pulled it down at the last second.
Yeah, Kareem was open.
I think they were trying to run a crossing route, and everybody ran into each other. So, yeah, everybody's on the ground.
Jeez.
Brady has second thoughts at the last moment and kills it. So.
Yeah, they did, huh? Good memory, Chris. There it is.
It's a great stadium, by the way. I love doing games in this stadium. God, that was close to getting blocked. I didn't realize how close that was.
Have people asking questions maybe in the couple of the feeds here, so let's get ready. Q&A session if they come through. Get the nice ticker at the bottom with all the PFF stats from quarter one. View the game from PFF lens. And see all the celebrities.
I'll never forget being on the set with Paul McCartney and Terry Bradshaw. Started what did he start singing? I Want to Hold Your Hand or something. And he did try to do one verse and he screwed up the words, and Paul just kept sailing right along with him. He just kept singing with him. He was great.
It's another good.
If you're just joining us, if you're just joining us, we have a ticker at the top. We're watching NFL Game Pass, Seahawks, Patriots. About 6:50 left in the second quarter. Be sure to just.
Do we want to answer some of these questions, Steve?
Have they Somebody
asked about the new playoff format. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
It's a question for the 2020 watch along, not the 2014 one.
It's going to be interesting. My one concern about it is, does it make more games meaningless for the top teams? You know what I mean? When there were two buys, that people played their tails off to get one of those two buys. Now, if you get somebody who's undefeated or one loss and it's over, does it? And you're ready. You're one of the top three sort of wild card. I just don't know. One of the great things I think about the current system is that, man, they're playing hard football all the way till the end of the season. And I always just thought the playoff system was so great, and it probably still will be. But that's my only slight concern.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you're going to get more teams that are weaker, like say Pittsburgh this past season, battling it out for spot 7. Then you are going to get teams that are like better, so New England and Kansas City last year, you might not get them playing their guys in week 17. And so you're probably going to get more meaningful games in December, but it's going to be by worse teams. The teams battling it out for the 7th spot instead of the 1 spot. we actually did a little bit of a simulation on this and found that even our intuition was that the number 1 seed would have a higher chance of winning the Super Bowl. But what we found actually was that it's not that case all the time, because the 2nd seed isn't always the 2nd best team. And so what happens is it's really just a huge decrease in probability of winning the Super Bowl for the 2nd seed by virtue of having to play an extra game. Yeah.
I didn't think the old system was broken, so I kind of liked the old system. I didn't think they needed to fix anything. That's my take.
I'm in agreement with you.
Money.
Yeah.
Somebody asked us where this Patriots team stacks up with some of their other teams, their other Super Bowl teams. Do you guys have any initial thoughts on that? It was really good. I mean, when you have Revis for this 1 year, you play as much man coverage as any team in the league. The defense was solid. Malcolm Butler was just a backup who randomly showed up at a clutch time, and the offense got going. I mean, it's got to be up there.
Yeah, I would say my glib, response is they're nowhere near as good as the 07 team.
Right.
But, the 03 and 04 teams were terrific, right? And so I would probably put it on par with those teams at least.
The thing that's
Especially on
tough
the defensive side of the ball.
Right.
And there's the Chris Matthews against Kyle. Is that Kyle Arrington?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And that's one of those plays that's got Belichick thinking, I can't have Kyle Arrington on this big guy, Chris Matthews.
Yeah.
To be fair, he just lost on the release as well.
How about a guy not with 1 catch all season makes that play to jumpstart his team in the Super Bowl?
Well, and he was the one that recovered the onside kick against the Packers the previous game. So it's sort of like this really out of nowhere Cinderella story.
Also, just how absurd a deep passer is Russell Wilson. The guy just has effortless accuracy on deep balls.
And the height he puts on it, I love. All right, here we go. Right. I want to talk about this one for 1 second. So we're 3rd down and 2, so they can get a first down here, I think. 3rd down and 2 on their own 2.5, 3 yard line after this run by Lynch. So what do? And obviously I'm comparing it to the end of the game situation. In this situation coming up, they're going to run the ball in from the 3 for a touchdown. So wouldn't you think this would make you lean a little bit that way at the end of the game?
Yeah, but I think the difference is the formation they're being faced with. Like, look at how the Patriots are lining up here versus the stack they put on the goal line on the last play.
It's a great pick. They were in a goal line defense at the end of the game. Correct. You're absolutely correct. This is more of a base defense, right?
They played a 3 corners, 1 safety look at the end of the game, and the other thing is this is a 3rd down, right? So running is actually more efficient on 3rd downs because, as Sam said, teams are in subs.
Yeah, they've got the numbers in the box there for sure.
Yeah,
but still, you got. Let's go to the end of the game for a second. Now you've got 2nd down and goal from the 1. Worst case scenario, if you run it, is you take time off the clock and give Brady less. And best case scenario is, you score. And I don't know. I just found the whole sequencing of that. But I think when they ran that goal line defense on the field, I think you're right, Sam. I think they had that in their brain. That was their pregame decision that they were going to have. If they trotted that goal line defense out there, they were going to throw it.
I think the thing is, you look at it. I mean, the thing is, even if you look at this play, right? Lynch is hit at the 1 yard line. Lynch gets the last yard on his own. So it's not like they blocked it up and he was able to get in. Like, he had to force his way the final yard over the goal line. The difference is, though, when you have that goal line defense there, they might hit him in the same place, but now there's no wiggle room. Now you're blocked in from all sides because there's just bodies everywhere. So when they contact you at the 1 yard line, you have to go right over that guy that hit you, and that's a hell of a lot harder to do.
No, it is, but it's still, I probably wouldn't have had a problem with them throwing the ball if they'd put Russell Wilson on the edge. Like I was asked after the game what I thought they were going to do. I said either I thought they were going to run Marshawn again on second down. There was no reason in my mind anyway not to. But if they did throw it, I thought it would be more of a run pass option, play fake to Lynch, and roll Russell Wilson out. If it's there, take it. If it's not there, throw it away or try to run it in. I mean, you had all your options were still on the table right there. It just seemed. I just remember thinking like, oh my God, they're going to drop back. I thought it was a quarterback draw when I first saw it. I said they're going to drop back here.
Didn't you gasp on air when he dropped back too? Like there was just like, didn't you like audibly gasp on air too? Like you were just weren't ready for them to drop back, right? Like you were watching the line or whatever it was.
And to Sam's point, the flip side of Sam's point is I have no problem with them, deciding they were going to throw the ball, but throwing over a goal line defense where everybody out there is 6'6", 6'7", whatever, with a 5'11" quarterback, that was all. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can't. The play that Malcolm Butler made was just one of the great things I've ever seen. I was thrilled to be there.
It was crazy.
That's kind of where I come back to. Is that I honestly think that the call was okay. I think that play works 98 times out of 100, at least in terms of getting the receiver the chance to make that play. Like he might not catch it 98 times out of 100, but you just don't see that play defeated that way. Maybe Butler gets there to break it up, but the fact that he picked it off is just insane.
Right. I'm with Krista. I mean, like if you're going to reduce the field in half, that's like, boot out Wilson, right? Like, I don't mind like dropping back and using the whole field, but that's not really what they did on that play. And then the underrated part of that play was the jam by Brandon Browner. Yes.
That makes it. Oh, no. That's the whole play right there.
Sam, you wrote a whole article on that the next morning, right?
Yeah. That was, as I say, we had Hell Month that was supposed to be, right, the Super Bowl's done, then I'll take a little break the next day. And instead, I was up early writing up that play.
Do you guys remember, Sam, you probably are the one that found it, but didn't we go back and find the number of times that year they had used that exact formation and essentially the same play? And I want to say the best result they had out of that play, they ran it like 5 times. The best result they had was like a completed pass that got stopped short of the goal line and they had to kick a field goal. Whatever. I mean, whatever the probability, like that was arguably their worst play all season as far as the results that they had from it.
Yeah, it was. I think it was Neil that dug that out the next day.
Five times they ran it from the same formation. This was they added a little bit of motion to it for the Super Bowl. First time they had done that. So it wasn't a common play call for them or a successful one. Also, Marshawn, I don't think was very good rushing, picking up 1 yard though either or something. He was 1 for 4, 1 for 5,
exactly
or whatever that
was not.
Pats are just trying to out leverage the Seahawks to the flat over and over and over again.
Yeah. This is what I was saying before, right? Is that Denver had this fantastic offense a year ago, but it attacked in a completely different style. And the game got away from them in a hurry right at the start anyway. But even before that, I wrote that that offense just was not well matched up with how the defense for the Seahawks is vulnerable. The Patriots was. They are willing to take 4 yards every single play, even if it's a pass play, in a way most teams won't. Most teams get frustrated and they take a shot, and that's when the bad things happen. The Patriots will just, if you're going to give them leverage to run a play to the flat and get 4, they'll take it every time, and they'll just march down the field in 15-play drives until they punch it in.
Right. I mean, because even if you're a good linebacker like KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner are, you're still giving up 6-7 yards a catch, right? Statistically speaking. And if you're an offense, you'll take that all day.
Well, and this was a great tackling team. They didn't miss tackles. Think about teams that don't tackle well on those balls in the flat. But it's going to be really interesting for me to see what Bruce Arians does with this. We all know Bruce Arians, loves to take his shots and do all that. But this is effectively Brady's games. And you forget when they had Edelman and Amendola and three backs that could catch like that, and Gronk, how many different sort of quick release kind of throw options that he had. I can't wait to see, and it's going to be strange because with the whole coronavirus thing going on, and nobody knows when are they going to first get to work together. If you've got a new quarterback coming in and a new coach relationship, how quickly are you going to be able to put that together?
Yeah, I wonder if it'll be a lot like 2011, right? Where when they had, the lockout, defenses were the ones that really suffered early, not offenses, even though there were, some offenses like, Panthers had Cam Newton. There were some offenses with new QBs. Defense was the furthest behind at the time. So it'll be interesting to see, but I sort of agree with you. It's an open question how these new offenses will do.
And then the one thing,
we got those guys moving everywhere.
The one thing that I think will be fascinating with the Brady thing is it's like when Manning moved, run the same offense for years, goes to a completely new setup, and it's, well, how does that work? Does Manning try and learn this new offense? And eventually in Denver, they just went, you know what, screw it, run whatever you want, you're good at it. Like, that doesn't feel like it will happen in Tampa, regardless of what would make sense in terms of melding the offense to Brady. It feels a lot like Arians is going to want to move Brady towards his system more than he's going to want to move his system towards Brady.
All right, we got about 40 seconds left in the first half, and a lot still to happen in the first half.
Yeah.
Seattle's playing a lot more man. You're seeing the Patriots create some separation out of the backfield, take a couple shots here and there. But, for a game that, again, feels like the Patriots are in control, 7-7. Now they have a chance to score before the half, go up by a touchdown, and they're seeing a lot more man coverage. What's going to happen? I wonder.
Yeah. Vereen absolutely eating Bobby Wagner's lunch at times in this game is sort of a sight to behold.
Game of inches as well. Bobby Wagner going for the punch out from behind, forced fumble there, changes everything again. Doesn't quite get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys ever watch the girls at training camp when they have the running backs coming out, running straight at an inside backer, and they can break right or left? I always felt sorry for those guys. Like, how do you cover that? You got some of the quickest athletes in the world, and he's coming right at your face, and he knows where he's going to go. And Brady's got, when you make inside throws, you have angles from everywhere. If you're throwing on an out route, you can be a little bit behind and still be in good position. But when the guy's running right at you, there's no way you can be right on that one. I almost never do those guys cover running backs in that situation.
No.
And Wagner's
so you have
good.
36 seconds, 2 timeouts here. You're never in a position here where you're scored too early, but you got Gronk bottom right of the screen against KJ Wright matched up.
They've been setting that up all game. They've been putting Gronk out wide the entire game, saying, please walk a linebacker out there. The previous play, it was Sherman on him.
Yeah, it was Maxwell, another play previously.
Yep. They've been waiting all game to set that one up.
I mean, and if you're the Pats, you got to think, okay, we've controlled the entire half. We did let up a touchdown drive on like kind of a fluky big play to an undrafted player, but now we're going into the half up 14-7, get the ball, you have to play defense to start the half, but you're pretty much in control here if you're the Pats.
So if you're watching along with us, we have a free PFF Edge subscription on the line here, PFF Draft Guide, over 1,100 pages. You need to tell us who the highest graded players were on both teams. Nobody has gotten it yet. Both teams during the first half. So first half's almost over. Highest graded players. The hint is that they're both wide receivers. So tweet at PFF with your answers. 2 wide receivers, 1 for each team. Who's the highest graded first half player? PFF Edge subscription is on the line as the Patriots take a 14-7 lead. And Brady ties his hero, Joe Montana.
Did you ever think he was going to San Francisco, Steve? You're Mr. New England Patriots. Did you think he was going out there?
It would have taken San Francisco to want him, but I think he wanted. I could see Brady his whole life thinking, "I'll do that. I'll do 2 years in San Francisco to finish it off." I just don't think they wanted him. They were good with Garoppolo.
Interesting.
Yeah, and don't you think it seems like Shanahan is a little bit less of a it sounds like he kind of prefers quarterbacks who he can mold a little bit more, right? Brady, he would almost have to mold the scheme to Brady less than he would with Garoppolo, and that seems why it always seems like he's preferred guys even back in the day in Cleveland, he preferred Hoyer to Manziel, who they just drafted. He prefers Kirk Cousins, who is sort of the classic quarterback who's like that. Garoppolo seems destined to be that way in his career. Sam, when the Vikings, got Brett Favre, right? It was like they had so much success and Childress hated it the whole time because it was one of those where he couldn't control Favre. And, a lot of those times the guys just love, they love to be able to do their scheme the way they want to. And the quarterback sort of gets in their way.
So we've got, first off, this is every offensive coordinator. This is their move, right, Chris? And I'm sure I think you mentioned it on the broadcast. We don't really want to go for it. We're going to run a play, but if we get a first down, we'll think about going for it with 25 seconds left, 30 seconds left in the first half. A huge run by Seattle, and they actually decide to, play football.
Yeah.
Well, that was Tom Brady's first Super Bowl, right? I mean, they threw that one little check down. It was just well, let's see if we get anything out of it. And they hit it for whatever it was, 10 or 12 yards, and here we go. And they end up winning the game.
Was it John Madden in the booth was basically begging the Patriots to go into overtime the whole drive, right? And then he kept, J.R. Redmond, Jermaine Wiggins, just dump off, and then they get in the field goal range.
We did get a winner for the PFF Edge subscription. I believe it's out of the YouTube chat, Matthew Ayer. Please go ahead and get your details to the PFF guys. Let them know where to find you on social media somewhere so we can give you your free PFF Edge subscription. And then this was kind of an important play as well. Wilson makes it happen. Jamie Collins played it right, and Wilson just makes him miss.
Sometimes players are the difference.
Is Jamie Collins going to be any good now that he's moving again?
I think at least having him stay in the same. Sam always says no. He thinks it's New England. At least it's the system. At least he'll be playing the same role under Patricia in Detroit. When he went to Cleveland, he was doing completely different things. So that was part of why that was an issue.
Yeah, they were playing him on the edge often in Cleveland, were they not? And then they moved to a 4-3 and just kind of wasn't a fit.
We were Jamie Collins when I first one of the early Patriots games in his career. I'm not even sure that he was active yet, but I remember I was at practice, and Belichick will always come over and say hello and spend a minute talking with you or whatever. So he came over one part during practice. And I was like, who is that number 91 out there? He's on the scout team, but he's just flying around. He just looked freakish, and he was like, oh, that's our whatever second round pick. And I think he's going to be pretty good. But once the price tag went to whatever it was, he was like, I'm out.
Sounds right.
So this penultimate play here, probably, one of the biggest in the game, hits Ricardo Lockett on a corner, sets up an interesting decision for Carroll. This was
when they were mic'd up. Carroll's trying to kick a field goal, and Russell's telling him, "Let's go for it." Shocking turn of events. Russell's telling him, "Let's go for it." Pete says, "Do it." And I'm watching. Belichick doesn't miss a beat with this stuff. With 6 seconds left, they have to throw it into the end zone, right? So, are you just going to grab somebody and just say, look, we're going to hold, and just don't let them catch it in the end zone? Take the penalty, and then give them the decision. They legitimately have to kick a field goal, or it's touchdown or bust. And we'll see if they do that. But it felt like it was pretty clear, like just tackle somebody in the end zone before you allow a touchdown. They've since changed that rule too, I believe, right?
Yeah. And this was absolutely the right. And this was absolutely the right call for Seattle. In 2014, a play from this spot is worth about 4.5 points. So kicking a field goal, you're giving up 1.5 points, on average. So smart move. Ultimately, sometimes the quarterback knows more than the coach.
I was going to ask, how much of that, you always see the quarterback want to go for it, right? How much do you think is the quarterback just always wants to go for it? And how much do you think the quarterback actually knows the numbers these days?
Well, it's interesting because I think our intuition is generally okay. It's about risk though, right? Like coaches, they play risk the long way, right? So they're trying to lower their chance of ruin, whereas I think players understandably are trying to maximize what's happening right now. And so those are different things. So usually they align, but sometimes, if you made a string of fourth down decisions and literally none of them happened, even if they were all positive expected value, you get fired at some point, right? Whereas a player isn't, they're not getting, if Russ throws a bad play here, it wasn't his decision to go for it that was bad. It was his throw, So it's a little bit of a different thing.
Yeah, I think generally coaches are probably risk averse and quarterbacks are more, what's the opposite of averse? Quarterbacks want to go for the risk. Those are the guys that, attack deep down the field, even when it is risky. They're willing to take the chance because they know they can get it done. Coaches are like, this could be bad. I could get fired. Now I'm gonna back off.
Well, I think sometimes it's also like from a drive perspective too. So in this situation, the drive's over, right? There's one play, and you either kick a field goal or you score a touchdown. I do think some quarterbacks are more risk averse when it comes to extending a drive, for sure. But coaches are more risk averse because their time horizons are often so much longer than some of their players, and so what you see usually is sacrificing a little expected value now to create it later, which is they're probably overdoing that, which is why you see so much conservatism in the league. You got Logan Ryan, outside corner right, and doesn't even challenge him at all.
Yeah,
it doesn't challenge him at all, really.
It's a great play
And
call.
Matthews,
it's touchdown or bust. At worst, they're getting a field goal. I mean, how much does the math change because of the end of the half stuff you're talking about? Because part of the value of us saying go for it, go for it, go for it is the field position, right? So there's no field position advantage to not scoring a touchdown. You are legitimately leaving 3 points on the field if you don't score a touchdown. How much does that change versus this play in the middle of the second quarter, say?
Well, it's more of in this situation, you're leaving 1.5 points or so on the field if you kick a field goal. You got to sort of look at it that way. Now, we never see the 4.5 points scored exactly. It's usually 3 or 7 or 0. But in this case, it's actually very much more of a simple problem because you don't have to worry about the subsequent plays.
I just don't. Speaking of plays I never understood, an inside off technique where you're going to back up into the end zone against a 6'5" wide receiver catching the back shoulder. Like what? In 6 seconds.
The only thing you're covering at that point is like a back pylon fade. If they throw anything else, you're in trouble.
Well,
which they didn't have time for anyway.
To zone the end zone. Don't zone the end zone, right? Like he doesn't even contact the guy until he catches the ball.
Right. And again, if he just tackles him, there's. I'm sorry. If Logan Ryan tackles him, it's first and goal. It's first and goal from the 1 with 2 seconds left, and Carroll's probably kicking a field goal.
Not even. I mean, you wouldn't even need to. Even if that was what you were playing and you wanted to play, legitimately, like at the point you realize they're coming up, do foul him. Do not let him catch it. Like don't wait for him to pass interference.
Yeah,
go to try and stop.
They closed that loophole this year.
Do something else.
They did.
They closed that loophole this year, but at this time it would have been the sharp thing to do. Basically, give them no out because with 6 seconds left, as you guys said, Matthews could drop the ball and there's still a second or two and you could get a field goal. But with if you get called for holding, they move it up to the 6. And then, you basically have a decision that this is the last play of the half because all the time is gone.
Philly special decision. The Eagles did it right.
But you
all right,
could,
second halftime.
Hold everybody. You're right.
So we're headed into the second half. We have another giveaway. And I got to remember what exactly the question is. It's about Chris. But in the second half, we have our very special guest. We were supposed to have a fourth quarter very special guest, and this is supposed to be a cringe-worthy, terrible night for her. And she's going to show up a little early, from what I understand. Okay, so Chris, what year were you drafted? Should we even give that away? Let's not even. All right. So we had the first half trivia on the highest graded players in this game. Now the question is for PFF Edge, featuring the PFF Draft Guide, who was the wide receiver drafted just before Chris Collinsworth? Wide receiver drafted just before Chris. Don't give it away, Chris, if you remember. But it's all for PFF Edge on the line. So YouTube chat, Twitter, wherever you are.
Yeah, this was by the Bengals. So I was a second round baby. This was a first round baby.
By the Bengals.
Right.
Yikes. The wide receiver the Bengals drafted just before Chris. So the question is, the wide receiver the Bengals drafted just before Chris. Doubling up at the position. I think a lot of teams should be doing that.
It's something we would advise now. Get yourself 2 receivers, and if the second round one is better than the first round one, it's only a little bit embarrassing, isn't it?
There's a great story about that in Chris's football life, right? That your agent was busy trashing Cincinnati because you thought you were heading to the Bengals. They draft a receiver in the first round, and then they come back and take you in the second.
Yep, my mom went running off in the back bedroom, crying her eyes out because my agent had trashed Cincinnati so badly in the meantime. I remember I won't tell who it was, but the guy he had a bright red Mercedes. And every day I used to park my Bobcat right next to his Mercedes because I wanted to walk right by both cars before I went out to practice. I go, that's the difference between them drafting him instead of drafting me. It's like stupid, but I definitely did that.
That's great.
Love it.
Well, there wasn't that a couple years later, wasn't there that funny story about Jim Kelly getting drafted by the Bills? And it was the Bills had 2 picks and 3, and they took a tight end first. And Jim Kelly was exclaiming for joy, and his mom's like, "Wait, they pick in one more pick, And then he gets drafted by Buffalo. He doesn't, That probably happens more often than not.
Draft day is an unbelievable day. I mean, it's like I literally moved 39 times on draft day. Every single time that a new team came up, it was I was from Florida, so when it was, Buffalo or whatever, wherever I wasn't, it was oh no, I don't want to go there. Oh, Miami, oh that'd be good. Seattle, Washington, no, but you do that. I mean, because there's a possibility that any one of those teams can end up taking you. And it is just the most bizarre day. I had a guy, a teammate of mine, who called. So I was out of my mind. This is the first, the draft went straight through back in the day. And so the whole first round's gone. All these people had lied to me that they were going to take me and they were going to do this whole thing. So we get around to the second round. And the New York Giants, I think, were on the clock. It was the year the Giants and the Jets had back-to-back picks. And the Giants were next. And they were interviewing people, in the peanut gallery for the draft, up in whatever wherever they had it. And so they were like, oh, who should the Giants take? And blah, blah, blah. And all these people kept saying, we don't care. But if they take an offensive player, we're not going to any more games. They've got to have defense. This team always drafts offense. It's ridiculous. And I was like going crazy. So my buddy calls me on the phone and goes, hey, this is so-and-so from the New York Giants. We're about to make our pick in the second round. So I've got all these television cameras in there. I've got all these friends and relatives in there. They all start cheering, and I'm like going, oh, it's a great honor. I'm sorry that the fans don't really want me, an offensive player there. Like hook, line, and sinker. So for like 3 or 4 minutes, I'm going, and I had no idea that this guy is totally yanking my chain with this stuff. And finally goes, hey, man, this is Alex. I go, I am going to freaking kill you. I'm going to kill you. And so now that goes through. Now I'm mad as a hornet anyway. And now literally the only time I had relaxed in the entire draft was when Cincinnati made their pick, because they'd already taken a wide receiver in the first round, so they weren't taking one in the second round. And that's the only time that I really relaxed. And, of course, that's where I go. Off goes my mom. She's crying because Cincinnati's this horrible place. And it was a train wreck from beginning to end.
Oh, man. Speaking of decisions to make, the Seahawks here, 4th and 1 from the 8, decide to kick a field goal. What do you guys think?
Well, I have the win probability at the bottom of the screen. I know it's a mistake.
So 4% doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it is in the NFL. And so, obviously they lose the game by 4, and you could sort of go back to this play and say, that they would have been nice to get those 4 points. But it is truly, it's a game of inches, and they give up 4 win probability points by kicking the field goal as opposed to running. And I think a lot of this, they just got stuffed on a couple runs in a row. There's probably a little bit of bias against wanting to run it again. But it was, a decision maybe Seattle would want to have back.
And if there's a coach that's going to say, hey, defense, I trust you, and that's why I kicked the field goal, because you're going to stop them. I mean, that's Pete Carroll, right? He's on the sideline telling his defense how much he loves them and hugging them, and you guys aren't going to give up another point. But this goes back to that end of the half point, right? Like if they don't get it here, okay, the Patriots have to drive 90 yards, right? With that same defense that you love so much. And, that's part of that whole, all the numbers there as well, is the fact that the Patriots have to drive the whole field if you don't get it.
Chris, your story reminded me. So there's a little bit of a rumor that the NFL might try to put a day on multiple rounds. Like say you use like 3 days to do the first round. That would make it worse for a player, would it not?
Of course, yeah.
Like you sitting there, like let's say you're picked 25, you're Aaron Rodgers, and now you got to wait 3 days to get picked.
You know what else entertaining terrible is waiting 4,500 picks to get drafted.
Right.
That's pressure there. You go 4,500. That's how many nights sleep is that? That has to be like a year, right? You're like Rip Van Winkle.
4 years worth. It was over 3 different drafts, so
That's what Kenny Anderson finally figured out, that he had spent like 3 years of his life in Wilmington, Ohio.
That's great. Seattle's flying to the ball now, tackling. They know how the Patriots are going to attack them here in the second half. In the flat.
Those are two bad dudes.
Got that answer.
Yeah, we didn't make
Seattle
that question.
Really had.
Once I gave them 1981, and I was in the second round, and it was the first round. That probably didn't take a lot of research.
Yeah, a lot of people got that one right. Oh, we have all Bengals fans here watching us.
What would Cam Chancellor be today? Sort of an interesting question. I think he'd be a linebacker in today's NFL. Don't you guys?
He pretty much was anyway, the way they use him, right? I mean, when they play cover 3, he is the in-the-box player. They just kind of like slow play him a little bit, which was what was unique about their scheme. I've heard Kirk Cousins break it down before. It looks like a quarters look because of the way they can kind of like lean their safeties. So he's like legitimately in between. I think he's still the prototype for the position that they're trying to find in that scheme.
Didn't you find it interesting that the Seahawks would come out and just show that coverage on Gronk? I mean, just straight one-on-one against Chancellor. You know, they'd already given up one long touchdown before the half and just come out and show that. Like, I can see disguising to it. It just surprised me when they would come out and just show it.
It's kind of how they did it, right?
Yeah.
All right, we have our very special guest. She's on her way in from ESPN, noted Seahawks fan, and this is, I believe, the first time Miss Mina Kimes has ever watched the second half. Is she already crying?
No.
Already crying. Mina is here. Welcome, Mina Kimes from ESPN.
Thank you for having me. I turned it earlier, reliving some memories. I forgot about that last touchdown. Forgot and just saw the big catch and why Arrington got benched. Ultimately, the Patriots fans were so angry at Kyle Arrington, but ultimately they owe him because if not for that benching, Butler doesn't get in the game. I'm already so upset.
Jeremy Lane gets hurt. So
Yeah.
Darryl Simon has to come in. A lot of what ifs in this one.
A lot of sliding
Does
doors.
Darryl Simon ever play again?
Yeah, he kept playing. I don't think he's in the league now. I forgot where he went after. Darryl Simon is why you should never trust Richard Sherman when he tells you that whatever rookie DB is playing opposite from him is the future, by the way.
Yeah.
So we're at about
How long did it take
8:15 or
Seattle to get over that game? That's how long did it take the city of Seattle to kind of move on?
For me, I think about this a lot. Oh, yeah. If they hadn't won the year before, I think I never would have gotten over it, right? But because we had been to the mountaintop, it was a little bit better.
Well, if they hadn't won the year before, you'd be a Vikings fan.
Yes. Oh, boy. Oh,
So you're Brady Mason.
Forgot about that.
We're at 8:07, third quarter. Brady just throws an interception to Bobby Wagner. If you're trying to stay with us here, we'll have a ticker at the top, in and out, so you can match it up.
So I got on my TV. I'm double with you guys. Oh, man.
Look at that.
I mean, this is looking like it's going Seattle's way here.
Yeah, this is right before. I mean, we all thought Wagner was good, right? But this is before he was the best linebacker in football.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask. Was Wagner that kind of cover guy going into this year? Did our numbers reflect that?
I think he was good, not great at the time.
He was good as a rookie, but I think, was this before or after Tony Dungy voted him as Defensive Player of the Year? The sole Bobby Wagner.
Well before. He had a 74
He voted him
grade.
as MVP, right?
Oh, it was MVP, not MVP. Wow.
MVP.
Forever
He was
a
a
legend.
good all-around player. That year, 74.9 PFF grade. He was one of only 3 linebackers to rank in the top 20 in all main categories: run defense, pass rush, and coverage. So he was on his way. He was good, but he wasn't up to that Luke Kuechly level just yet.
Yeah, he hadn't taken the step into being one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL yet. That was kind of 2017, 2018. He hadn't become that player yet, but glimpses of it.
Where did he end up grading this year? About 10th or something, or in coverage?
Which year? Sorry,
This year.
Yeah, he was still in the top.
Listen, Mina, you're putting us on the spot here.
Yeah,
I'm trying to integrate PFF data into the simulcast.
Right. No, we appreciate that. Linebacker was kind of a position not replete with great players this year.
Can I guess who was? Obviously, I don't have it in front of me. Can I guess who was number one or?
Okay.
So he was much lower in coverage this year, by the way. But 12th overall.
Demario Davis.
That's a good guess. He was second.
Oh, and we're doing like 80% snaps, or?
Yeah.
Let's do 50.
I don't know. Littleton, maybe Corey Littleton. He's awesome.
It's not a bad one.
Yes.
7th.
I am at a loss.
Tell me whatever happened to Chris Matthews after this game. I've never seen a guy that goes for catches and dominates a Super Bowl like this.
He recently stepped down from MSNBC. That's the latest.
I saw that.
I mean, it's Eric Kendricks of Minnesota.
Here all night. Oh, Eric Kendricks. That's a good one. Yeah. So he stuck around the team for, I believe, another year, and then after that, he was, I want to say, on the Colts, maybe, or did he go to the Colts? He landed at
Baltimore, right?
Baltimore.
He was cut like halfway through 15, I want to say. Yeah, but yeah, did nothing. Like Timmy Smith reminds me of that. Wasn't there like a Washington running back that rushed for like 200 yards in the Super Bowl and then did nothing after that?
Yeah.
In this game,
that's like Matthews.
So as I recall, it's been a while, but in this game, I think it's once a classic Brandon Browner hold right there. Once they got Browner on Matthews is when they started to neutralize him, I think.
The thing is, he didn't actually play that much, right? Like he caught everything basically that was thrown his way, but it's not like he was their every down receiver. He still only played like, in the teens of snaps, right?
That's correct. I mean, didn't Wilson only had like 10 attempts at most going into the second half? Yeah,
they weren't throwing or completing many balls until late in the first half. Kind of a nice little lead block by Will Tukuafu here.
Chris, this is the famous play that we had you voice over for our NBC special. Our draft.
It was. Yeah. Sometimes he makes runs you just go, oh my gosh, which always throws me back to the last play of the game. So I love just watching the sequence one more time to get me to that. I just want to see what my gut feeling still is when I get to that last play.
Well, look at that. He's not going anywhere. First and goal.
This was after they were on 3rd and short and Ninkovich got to him, right? Was that the prior drive before I joined?
Yeah, the one where they kicked the field goal on 4th and 1.
Where it's a class, they're running inside zone. Wilson doesn't keep it. Ninkovich comes streaking across and gets to Lynch. So I'm convinced that was in their head.
Wilson's been setting up the keeper for about 8 years now.
I know.
Yeah.
This is a play, I think, where Doug Baldwin uses the referee to shield off Revis. And then Sherman talks shit to Revis on the side. There it is.
I think you're right. All right.
Yeah, that was one we missed in the broadcast, thankfully.
Oh.
That was a I won't even say it.
Oh God. Oh, this is awful.
I mean, you got the best defense in the league with a 10-point lead almost in the fourth quarter.
20 minutes to play. Yeah.
Have you guys talked about the ending?
Watching this too?
What you think of the call? Or at what point do we start litigating that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Last 5 years I've been talking about it.
Who's on Team Pass? Really?
I'm Team Pass.
What?
Yeah.
I'm team throw a different pass.
Well, yes.
I'm team throw the same pass. I have no problem whatsoever with the call. None. They got out-executed. That's all that happened.
No way.
Really? Wow. We can get into it. God knows I get into it every night of my life. I go to bed.
It's the right call against goal line.
It was goal line.
Honestly, a brilliant was it Michael Hawley's book on the Pats where they said, I think leading into this season, Belichick put in a 3-corner, basically base defense. And
I
then
think you're right.
Yeah,
There's Sherman.
and that was like that's the great thing was like you keep your front seven, a bunch of front seven players, but you're still able to cover some kind of like wiggly routes like that.
Right. That's why when it happened, a lot of people thought they weren't in goal line because they had the three corners out there, right? And we hadn't seen that.
Wow, Richard.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, the umpire being there for a pick.
Yeah.
I love Richard.
The feud between those two is hilarious to me.
Revis, yeah, right. We're now seeing some of the origin story here. I forgot. Yeah.
You on our show, Mina, at the Super Bowl, you talk about how brilliant of a businessman Revis was. That's pretty. I think that's pretty noticeable here in this game, where he is just mercenary style goes to New England, wins a ring, and leaves. Signs with the dumb team.
It's the Kirk Cousins.
Right. Who's the better
except for winning the Super Bowl part, but yeah.
It's the many players who leave New England, right? I did a story with Revis in 2015 when he signed with the Jets. He was on the cover of ESPN the magazine. I love him, by the way. He's such a weird guy, such a quirky guy. And I remember in the story I said his year in New England, it was like when an actor does like an indie film and then immediately sells out and does like an action movie, but he built up his credibility. I don't think he paid for that much. It was like single digits, millions at most, right? This was coming off of the Bucks. So he played it all perfectly this year in New England. And then
Bucks might have still been paying him a little bit. They released him.
They were still paying him.
Isn't there no bigger example of a coach who values his scheme over talent than Lovie Smith cutting Dale Revis and signing Alteron Burner?
Yeah.
I got to play cover two.
Revis can't play cover two, guys. Sorry.
Well, the thing is, he was still better playing cover two than Alteron Verna was. He was just a shell of Revis. Like, it wasn't even that you were getting better at the position. You were getting worse. You just didn't have the constant reminder that you could be 12 times better if you were running a man coverage system.
Yeah. One of the heartbreaks of this game, Sam, as a Vikes fan, Kevin Williams not getting a ring.
Oh, Kevin Williams. Right. I forgot about that.
It's a long tradition. He
finally did what you
tackles.
Well, yeah, right. There's been a few. I was excited about that time.
He finally played nose tackle like you had always wished, Sam.
Right.
Throw Simon. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to have to say it.
Averill.
Nobody else will. The Seahawks have all the momentum right now. It's clear.
Okay,
the Seahawks have the momentum.
Here, friends, is the definitive moment of the game. Cliff Averill.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but so you're looking at 2nd and 20, which is normally a death sentence for an offense, right? And backed up, down 10.
So whatever
And Julian Edelman covered by Kevin Williams.
That's right.
Oh, God. Forgot about this. Yeah, after Averill went out, the pressure rate must have dropped precipitously. And Bennett was largely neutralized.
Well, that was sort of the characteristic of the Super Bowl against Atlanta as well, where you just they just wear you out. They take the body blows, and then eventually you have nothing left to give.
I was thinking about that with this last Super Bowl with San Francisco, right, where you saw kind of the lack of depth on the defensive line costing him at the end of the game. Comparing that to like the Eagles Super Bowl, Chris remembers, where they were able to rotate so many bodies in and out in the D-line, and just thinking about how Super Bowl teams are built.
So, Chris, in a game like that, so when you, at this point, not a lot of hope for New England, huh?
I've seen too many New England games. It would be a stretch for me to say not much hope in the third quarter, but they it wasn't looking good. I'll say that it did, and I think the thing that we all forget was the point you guys brought up earlier was that this was the team. that blew out Peyton Manning the year before. So they're coming off. I mean, they're the defending champs. We all think of the Patriots as being this unbeatable team, and yet this was really the team that was, at least in my mind, going into it, and with the Deflategate and all the other things, that you're thinking this is the team to beat in this one.
And right now, it feels like Seattle's defense is starting to find their groove. New England was moving the ball like crazy in the first half, not so much in the second half. So, Mina, I'm not setting up. I'm just, painting a picture of where we are late third quarter here. Seattle does feel like they're in control.
Yeah, I was feeling good. I remember vividly watching this point. I remember being worried about the Averill thing. I do remember that.
I still think it's amazing that Seattle had no receivers in this game that were drafted. And they're out here 10-point lead against the Patriots. But
how many catches did Elijah have in his career before this?
Not many, right? And he had to quit, right, because of a neck injury. Was that right?
Yeah, one of the scariest injuries I've ever seen in football was a special teams injury where he was almost paralyzed. I think the doctor said if they had moved him like 1 inch to the left, he would have been paralyzed. He's doing great now. But yeah, he does.
Yeah, he only played 491 snaps in his career, and the last one were the next year, 2015. So yeah, beginning of the end here, unfortunately.
Matt really Patricia, glad the defensive the most important play of the game. We'll get there.
The Matt Patricia, defensive coordinator. Interesting to see what he does in year 3 in Detroit.
I mean, there's probably some of these Patriots are on his team now, right? Who are on this squad.
Yeah, I mean, so Jamie Collins.
This was many years ago, right now.
The Collins, and I guess no.
Amendola too, yeah, very much. Yeah. Well, Trey Flowers. Flowers was drafted in 2015, right? That was our first year of grading college football. You guys love Flowers coming out.
Yeah, we called him a first-round pick. Made us look good.
He's not been bad.
And then, this is the great.
Steve,
what's that?
How many pages was the draft guide the first year?
Oh, we didn't even do one in 2015, so 2016 would have been the first one, maybe 300. Now it's 1,100.
1,100? Jeez.
Yes. 1,100.
This was a
PFF edge in the league.
Oh,
yeah, so right. The first Malcolm Butler play of the game, and he gets beat, but unfortunately, so let's hear.
Yes.
Great throw.
Look at this.
Yeah, another absolute
time throw. PFF still giving him credit.
Seattle decides to punt here. They're currently 82% to win the game. If they were to go for it, they would have been 85% to win the game. So not to pour salt on the wound here, but it's sort of one of those where we talk about as our heuristic. If you're a New England fan here, you're absolutely elated that they decided to punt and not go for it, right? Which probably means it was a good decision to go for it.
Shocked that Pete Carroll.
Yeah. Don't you think there's a difference between a guy who grew up as a defensive coordinator versus a guy who grew up as an offensive coordinator?
Yes, totally.
Yeah,
really aggressive
because we
defensive coaches, like in written currently in the NFL.
Yeah, I think part of it. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but it's sort of one of those where coaches like Dan Quinn, for example, like they think of it as like an insult to their defense if they don't project trust, right? But I feel like that's obviously like a leakage in the whole way of thinking about football.
That would be an interesting study to look at, aggressive fourth down rates and see how many of those coaches in the top 10 over the last 5 years have actually been defensive coaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Even when it comes down to things like letting another team score at the end, or not using your timeouts. Like we've seen it before where they're like, well, I just trusted my defense. I was like, well, but it's 1st and goal from the 4, so you gotten dragged up and down the field here. Like your defense probably gets it at this point. You want to keep time on the clock for your offense, and I think it's an exploitable sort of like leakage in the NFL, the way that some of the coaches think.
And we've talked to offensive coaches who say, hey, I understand the importance of the pass game, but I have to call some runs because my offensive linemen like to hit people. I mean, it works both ways as well, depending on who you're trying to appease.
So,
all right,
interesting part about this. Go ahead, Chris.
I used to accuse him. I would tell him, I said, you don't care if we win the games or not. You just care if you came up with 0 sacks and 200 yards rushing, and we went 0-16, you'd be a happy guy. So offensive line coaches and wide receivers are rarely on the same page.
Yeah, sounds right.
Everybody has their own agenda that they're trying to fulfill. And if they're not giving up sacks, they're happy. Offensive line coaches and defensive coaches are cut from the same cloth.
Huge 3rd and 1 stop there.
Yeah, another stop. Seattle looking really good here. But you bring up a great point, Chris. I mean, it's hard because there are these like the basically key indicators of success, but they're not exactly perfectly correlated with winning, right? So then you sort of reap what you reward, and if you reward like not giving up sacks, then you'll just throw quickly and be less efficient as an offense. Or if you reward running for 150 yards, then you'll do that. Or it's sort of the common theme has to be winning, and I think that's lost on a lot of folks when they make excuses or when they justify their decisions.
As much
my biggest thing is think of it in terms of possession. So you get 11, 12 possessions on average per game, something like that. And every time you punt that football, or even if you kick a field goal, there goes one of those 11 shots that you get, and once you get possession of that thing, and you got to pry it from my cold, dead hands and get it away from me. I just know the difference. Like I coached all levels, high school and Pee Wee football and all those different things. Man, when you're the offensive play caller and the head coach and you get a chance to decide whether or not we're kicking it or going for it. And I went for it one time on 4th and 7 from my own 7-yard line. So, I mean, you can't, it's hard to pass the baton, you want your guys to have a shot.
Well, and you know the value. Go ahead, Sam.
Go on, Eric. No, go on. Keep going.
Well, you know the value of the value of having control over the game. I mean, you even look this past year, there were a bunch your game against Chiefs Packers in one of your games. The Chiefs punt the ball. They get the ball down at the one. They get the best situation you could ever get from punting the ball, and the Packers get a couple first downs, and the Chiefs never touch the ball again. And it's like once you relinquish the possession, as you said, you lose almost all control over the game.
It's still hard to believe Seattle lost this game from here.
So this was similar. People were trying to.
Mina, are you sure you're happy you came a quarter early?
I feel fine now. It's going to be there's this the Edelman, the drive where Edelman converts on 3rd and 14 and gets concussed. Once that it's about to get bad. It feels like a horror movie where the ending, but you still tense.
Yeah, nice little dial of pressure there.
Oh,
this is what the Chiefs had this year. Mahomes down 10, Richard Sherman on the other side. We've got one of the best defenses in the NFL. Very similar situation.
Interestingly, we talked about this off air earlier. This is only the second Super Bowl in the history of the game where a team came back from double digits and won. And now there's been 3 since New England versus Atlanta, and then Kansas City versus San Francisco.
George is not happy.
Yeah,
with
George
that
is mad.
reference. Sorry.
1987 was the only Super Bowl before this that a team had a 10-point deficit and won the game.
The encyclopedia strikes again. All right, if you're just tuning in, we're in the fourth quarter. We're about to start Patriots drive. What is it, 12 something left here? Make sure you catch up. We're looking at Super Bowl tickets. Get to the right spot so we're all on the same page.
I think this is the drive where Brady goes like 13 for 13 or some BS. Or not quite that, but I think
from here on out, it's pretty good from what I remember.
Yeah,
Mina, you have some compatriots in the chat. Somebody just said, "This hurts, man. I hate this." Lenny was complicit is one of them, but there's a lot of just like this. I hate this song type of thing. So you're not alone.
I appreciate those that are doing it. But look at this start.
Inauspicious.
Could be worse. You could be a Falcons fan.
Yeah, it was worse. Oh, I think that coverage sack you just saw there might have been the last of the game for Seattle. Yeah. Recently returned to the Seahawks, Bruce Irvin. I don't think Michael Bennett actually finished with a sack, even though he was by far the most disruptive player. Am I right? I don't have it.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very good in the game, though.
Well, 5 hits, no sacks.
Early before the game, actually, he was a dark horse MVP pick.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, who would you have made the MVP had Seattle won? Was it Matthews, or would you have picked somebody on the defensive side?
We showed Bennett so much in this game. Probably would have been him. But, you got to vote. The whole thing's ridiculous. You got to vote like in the third quarter. I never understood how they could possibly do all that like that.
Was that Brandon Marshall sitting next to Roger Goodell?
Yeah, that's great.
Don't know why.
Marshall was just before his great Ryan Fitzpatrick season of 2015. He was gearing up for that.
Oh, here's one of the real controversial plays in the game, and I've got to admit that we weren't great on this play. We had, because Edelman got up and ran, but then staggers at the end of this play. I'm already starting to talk about the replays and watching some replays of that one. And we showed the hit, but we didn't show the end of it again when he was staggered. And in today's game, he would have been out here for at least one, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
We talked about the sliding door. Cliff Averill goes out. Edelman stays in. That's the difference in the football game. I'm not salty about it. I think it's undeniably accurate. I mean, I am salty about it.
There's actually nothing better than salty fans watching their team.
It's better than when we win.
I'm just glad I can't hear all of it when I'm calling the game. Like, I'm glad I can't hear every comment being made about my commentary. That would not be good.
Your last
you don't
Super
have
Bowl,
Twitter
Chris,
up?
Philly versus New England. I don't have
Twitter.
Not since
I have Twitter up.
Night show.
So Vereen absolutely toasted up, man.
He was very. We were waxing poetic about Vereen in the first half.
When did they start? Yeah, okay. So that's what I was about to say. So Earl Thomas, who just had the personal foul, at some point they had to put Earl on Vereen because he was the only defensive player fast enough, which ended up compromising, I think, other parts of the secondary. Because then it was like a chain reaction, right? Lane goes out. You move Maxwell, who's very slow, into the slot, and it's like one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden the Patriots have mismatches all over the field.
Yeah, you're weaker at two positions now. I don't know if Brandon LaFell is the over-the-top player that the Patriots try to make him here on this play. I think Simon's probably good at one thing, which is turning and running with a slow, tall receiver. But
pretty much
be wrong.
Actually, not.
He should cover Chris Matthews.
That's a pass interference.
Right.
Yeah.
This was before they called it so frequently. Last few years.
I mean, he
So
definitely
had the 3rd and 14. Had the 3rd and 14 earlier. The Edelman catch over the middle. 3rd and 8 coming up here.
When did they start changing the way they called DPI in response to the Seahawks? What year was that again? And
defensive pass interference.
Not DPI, holding. When did the league start changing that?
I don't know. I mean, I do know that 2004 was the first one, right, where they, in response to the pass against the Colts, right? That's when they started calling illegal contact all the time. And then I'm not sure about DPI.
Or rather, holding was. I started calling that more aggressively in response to the. Oh God.
Yeah. Well, then this year was the year with the OPI because of the trying to be proactive about the reviews. But.
So all of a sudden, the Seahawks are dropping defensive tackles into coverage on the regular over the middle.
DeMarcus Dobbs.
I forgot DeMarcus Dobbs existed.
It's not a bad
that
strategy.
Feels like a questionable.
That's where they're attacking.
It feels like a questionable adjustment to me.
Yeah.
I have to rewatch that one.
So this is fascinating, right? That's the game-winning play. Brady misses it. The eventual game-winning play. Misses it there.
Oh, sure.
But they know they have something. That's Edelman one-on-one with Darrell Simon. Clear mismatch if it's any sort of horizontal route.
Yeah.
Missed him.
Chris, when you were on the outside in the inside the 10-yard line, what was your favorite route? Was it this scat route right here?
I would kill if they let me run anything like this. I don't think I caught one quick screen, wide receiver screen my whole career. I don't think I got thrown one fade in the back of the end zone my entire career. We just didn't do that stuff. I mean, we were running, pivots and hooks and slants. And
how'd you not catch a fade?
So
or not
better.
get thrown a fade? How did you not get thrown? Yeah.
Oh, Maxwell. No, maybe not. It's just bad.
It's on Earl.
No, I think what's his name gets. I think Bobby gets frozen. Let me try.
Yeah.
So that's on Earl.
I mean, you can't rewind it here. We're all staying live here. You can't rewind it and watch the play. Who do I blame?
No, yeah, that's just straight up.
That's crazy. So, Chris, you played for the Bengals when you guys were running no huddle and all that kind of stuff, but they were still running traditional type routes back then. Not a whole lot of the you were running bubble screens.
All the stuff that we did that I never I can't even blame anybody else. I should have thought of this myself. But teams, it was kind of a few teams. Cleveland, Oakland played a lot of the just straight bump and run man to man, and you know how you can't even run that hardly anymore because bunches and picks and all the different things they do to it now. But back then we just stayed out wide and ran 20-yard dig routes, and our quarterbacks were just getting slaughtered. They were rushing 5, and it's interesting how the game back shoulder throws. I never had a back shoulder throw. Nobody did that. It was like the game is just better. It's just way better than what it was.
You didn't get to wear gloves or anything cool like that, right? Well, not early, not as nice as the gloves are now.
I wore gloves when it was 59 below zero wind chill, and I wore gloves in my last game, the Super Bowl in Miami, because I was we were just goofing around. And I said, well, let me try one of these new fancy gloves. I put them on. I was like, I couldn't drop a pass with one of these things on if I tried.
Right. I don't understand how anybody ever caught anything without those receiver gloves.
No.
It'd be like playing baseball without a glove today.
Yeah.
But the balls
Yeah,
were
so-
brand new right out of the box. Still had all that shiny, slippery crap on them. Now they buff them
Yeah.
all up. It'd be fun to play now.
Yeah. So if you're so 8 minutes left here, are you? I actually don't remember what happened on this drive. Are you in the 4-minute drive, or are you in try to score here?
Well, they're trying to score, and that's right. This was a huge play in the game, and maybe a slightly missed call here. Malcolm, basically every big play involves Malcolm Butler from here on out. Look at this.
Oh, I forgot about this. There is a mistake.
Did he
Totally,
trip him?
Did he trip him? Oh, jeez. I forgot that.
Malcolm
that's
Butler is
getting beat
everywhere.
That's getting beat so badly that you can't even get called.
He should have gotten the goal, but I remember he got him, but yeah, just by the ankle in there.
Butler went from the hero to goat about 6 times in this fourth quarter.
Right, because he was the one that tipped the ball to Curse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the play.
Up.
My wife was about a month pregnant, completely nauseous and miserable and going crazy as a Patriots fan. Reliving the heartbreak of 07 and 11 and saying, it's going to happen again. And just, yeah, she was all over the place that night. We'll get there.
I think I actually made a comment on that when they got that ball that they caught on the ground.
Well, it's sort
Maybe
of
there's you that said it's going to happen again.
Well, Al called the Chris Dishman play to Antonio Freeman, right? That was like kind of similar, right? Where the receiver's laying on the ground, the ball just lands in his arms.
Yeah, he did what? He did what?
Yeah. It's like I think that's an all-time Al call too.
The man's got some good ones.
Yeah.
They used to love doing this with Marshawn. I mean, usually you worked a lot. I mean, it's just overthrow, but.
John Ryan being like the only punter in the league that did the nose down punts from the middle of the field was something else too.
That makes it so much easier to catch punts. It's unbelievable how much easier that is to catch because then it's like a kickoff. Like you got to try to drop a kickoff, but punts are hard to catch because they come. They're like frisbees. They go up, and if they turn over, they go another 10 yards. If they don't turn over, they almost drop straight down to the ground. But you do those end over end; those are easy to catch.
Well, and there's a realistic chance you're just going to get clobbered too, which is like the hardest part of the punt as well, right? Like there's people bearing down on it. You got to decide whether to fair catch or whether to go for it.
Look how young Belichick looks in this game. I feel like
there were the reports about he and Brady's relationship, right? Maybe it wore on him.
That's possible. Yeah.
The last 5 years have been so tumultuous.
You should see me 5 years ago before I bought PFF.
Fucking brain.
This was our first year together, Chris. You bought us in 2014. This was our first season together.
I can remember it well.
Which is why we didn't, sleep the entire month of January.
How much was Sherman actually targeted in this game? Probably like negligibly, right?
It would have been just Sherman. It would have been just the short stuff in the flat. Yeah.
2 times for 6 yards.
Yeah. Look at the total absence of pressure in this half. It's just great, or quarter rather.
Hey, it was Avrill's replacement though that made the big stop on that third down. That the Jack Vollmer back into the backfield caused that drive to crap out.
Brady averaging about 6 yards an attempt here. Kind of sort of a ho-hum day until this drive.
Okay. Oh my God.
Starting to unravel for old Farrell.
Oh God, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't say it was starting to. Hey, don't eat that. No.
You talking to Eric?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, they just lost so much speed in this. I mean, it's funny. The Seahawks, their defense, they were so physical, but they didn't have that much speed. Like there were a few, like 2 or 3 really fast players, but there were a lot of really strong guys that could be exploited with a lot of the things that the Pats are doing in this game. All that stuff, the motioning, the move,
Their
going
speed
out.
was on the D-line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they didn't, like, the guys that weren't fast didn't let you exploit the speed differential, right? Like, you could never exploit Sherman for speed because he just got a hold of you. Simon hasn't figured out how to do that, so Edelman's just getting separation from him every time.
Michael Bennett's still free.
Oh wow! Right over Bruce.
Bruce Irvin, basically their most if you look at draft capital, right at the time was their most expensive player up front, right? Because we talk about Averill and Bennett were cheap. Irvin was the one that was sort of like a head scratching first rounder.
Yeah, right. That was the Russell Wilson draft. So by this time he was in his third or fourth year. What year? 12.
Made up for it with Wagner and Wilson. Yeah.
Yeah, Utah. Oh. Yeah.
Everybody thought he was too undersized.
Irvin? Yeah. And he had issues in college, right? He had some red flag stuff, off the field stuff. Mm-hmm. But he was kind of a unique fit because the Seahawks used to use like the Leo
Sparky
tweener like that pretty regularly.
Yeah, he's kind of been the last one of those, right? The last kind of Sam linebacker that plays defensive end in the nickel, right?
Yep. I mean
teams don't play 4-3 that much anyway, but
yeah. Well, I don't know if you've followed our Seattle Seahawks lately. If you enjoy base,
that's true. That's true.
If you're into 3 linebackers on the field at all times,
Irvin was
the last. We were talking about Mina. We were playing nickel. It's just that the nickel was a linebacker.
Yeah. Did Seattle ever tell you why they refused to play 5 defensive backs this year or more?
Because they had better players otherwise. But I love Mina. I've never heard a girl complaining about playing too much base defense. It's just fantastic. I think you're like my new favorite.
I'm just perpetually angry, Chris. This is why whenever people talk about being homers, I'm like, I'm the opposite of a homer. I'm angrier than everyone all the time.
Watch the Broncos Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, that one was kind of after the NFC Championship, kind of anticlimactic. How did you guys like the Dunbar pickup, though? Speaking of improving the Seahawks secondary,
Steal.
I loved it.
Steal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The Seahawks are smart again. QED.
We'll see. There's still time to draft a running back in the second round.
You never have too many.
Don't sell them short. Don't sell them short.
We're going to write off Rashad Penny just like that, huh?
Yeah. Rashad was looking good for like a quarter and a half before he tore his ACL.
Yeah, I know. That was a bummer. I think Carson will be back by the beginning of the year. I'll be curious to see what they do with him contractually.
Yeah, because I would say he's actually pretty good. I mean, as a running back, like I don't think that many of them are all that much different than any other, but he runs the ball differently than a lot of them.
He's very good. It's fun to watch Marshawn in this. I mean, Pete Marshawn is still just stylistically such a unique back. It's really fun to watch. All right, so let's see.
So they're setting up this.
Is this the play, or does it get to third down?
I think they set it up. I think they run it now, if I remember. I honestly don't even remember them running it a whole lot before that, it became kind of a staple from there on out. I think it was Brady's 400th touchdown the next year. Not that year, but in his career. The whole
Notably, both teams have 3 timeouts here. That'll become material soon.
New England wastes one.
Mm-hmm. How do we feel about you want to talk about the Belichick, the lack of the timeout at the end? Have you guys discussed that? Everybody's got their theories. Was it a mistake or was it deliberate?
I think it was just luck.
Yeah, he probably should have called a timeout.
I mean, my only guess is that when he saw he got what he wanted. I think when he had goal line against 3 wideouts. Was that the set down there for that last play? And in his gut, I think he was going, if I call timeout, they're going to sub out and they're going to do something to run Marshawn Lynch. I'd much rather them throw the ball here. I'm going to take my chances. This is my spot. If they're going to throw the ball, at least I've got some chance to win the game.
I think you're right.
If they run the ball, they're at the very least clicking time off and probably scoring a touchdown anyway.
That's always it's kind of an interesting thing. You can't really capture with analytics like the benefit of giving teams time to make decisions versus that additional 26 seconds or whatever you'd be giving your team. You can't factor that into any model.
Well, and I think it's an interesting discussion because people who are really good at their craft are often very instinctive, right? So often that time can be overthinking, and some of the time it's a good thing, right? It probably just depends upon the person. But
this is the play. Sorry, they decided to run power on first down instead.
Yeah. Oh my God. Hey, don't eat that.
Didn't set it up with play action that time. Just said,
Chris, that would have been your route. I feel like that would have been your route in the 80s that they actually let you run it.
Yeah, if they let me push off like I used to, I would have been.
The scat route? I mean, that's difficult to cover. The corners weren't that tall back then, though, right?
No, we didn't.
Especially against a taller corner. It's not really a chance.
We did a lot of options. We did a lot of choice routes. We did a lot of, where you read the defense on the fly like the quarterback did, and you knew where they were going to throw it.
Mm-hmm.
Mina, I'm just watching your facial expressions. How's it going over there?
Let's just say I said some unkind things about our friend Harold Simon during this game. Reliving some feelings.
At this point, the Patriots just have mismatches everywhere. Like they had Simon there, they had a touchdown in the slot to Amendola as well because they blitzed Maxwell. Like they couldn't cover them anymore.
Yep.
Under bettors lose despite a scoreless first quarter. You hate to see it.
So much time for Russell Wilson here. So much time.
Hey.
Okay.
Yeah, he's ready. Look at him.
Can you?
There's something cool though. Like if you watch the NFC Championship game the week before this, he absolutely played probably his worst game of his career, and then he just comes in, right? He comes in, ice in his veins, drives down the field, hits Curse for the touchdown in overtime, and so like at this point he probably feels invincible, don't you think?
Yeah. By the way, in that the Green Bay game. Curse was responsible for like half of the picks. That was another name I cursed a lot.
Is the Jermaine Curse love among Seahawks fans a joke? Like my Sammy Watkins fandom?
Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah. I mean, it was frustrating. I don't know if any of you remember this, Chris, watching Wilson. He was kind of just locked in on him for a while. And it was deeply annoying when Doug Baldwin is on your roster. He would just lock in a Curse and force it to him.
Well, and then you guys had Golden Tate too, who's like turned out to be a really good receiver, and then you just let him go like he was nobody, sort of weird.
Well, and this game in particular, I think, is one where Golden Tate's absence was sorely felt. He would have been the perfect weapon, I think, to exploit some of the issues in the Patriots secondary. And
Yeah.
Well, here we go. 202. Seattle's going. They're trying to start their dynasty. New England hadn't won a Super Bowl in 10 years, and the two that they lost had the Tyree catch and a Manningham catch.
She's gone.
Well, Chris, when you're calling
Look
a game
at
like
this start. Look at Marshawn receiving weapon on Jamie Collins one-on-one.
Jeez.
There you go.
So, Chris, what's it like when you obviously don't have a rooting interest in this, but what's it like to call a game that's like just down to the wire like this?
like I was saying.
Well, I mean, you're obviously you want to get it right too. You know, I mean, these are the plays that are going to be replayed for the rest of your lifetime as well. And you think about it. Believe me, you think about it. And I know my final comments on this one. I probably took 30 seconds before I decided to go after it.
Yeah.
So just to have some time before we get to second down, 26 seconds. No, I want Chris to explain, because I never thought I would have this audience. Why are you team run? Because everyone else, we were all team pass, right? Did I get a unanimous team pass from the rest of the
I'm just matching up
crew?
with personnel. But yeah, Chris, what's your call?
Please.
No, I could have had no problem whatsoever with passing, but not that pass. I thought that with goal line defense in there, I don't want my 5, 10, 11 quarterback throwing over anybody. There's just too many things, too many tip balls, too many, batted at the line of scrimmage. I just don't want that. And I thought, and sometimes this is just a gut feel, but I thought, they were lucky to get Marshawn Lynch on the ground on the run from the 5 to the 1. They just Hightower reached his hand out or whatever and just tripped him up. And I thought they were dispirited. I thought New England had just sort of, they were, in my mind, they were probably debating whether or not they were just going to score or, whatever the case. It was just like, they just felt dispirited at that point from my standpoint. And I think Marshawn Lynch was so amped up, and watching him run, he made the catch down the sideline here. And it was second down. It wasn't third down, so you still had a third down to play with if you wanted to throw the ball, and a fourth down for that. So you had plenty of downs, plenty of time. I just would have given him a chance to win the game. I thought that's how the game was being defined anyway.
If they had run it, then they would have had to pass on their remaining two, right? The optionality would have been gone on the remaining 2 downs because of the time left. So I strongly believe that as a member of Team Pass, it was as much about keeping that New England defense on their heels by giving themselves those options with the remaining 2 plays.
Yep. Everybody has their own, but I was, I don't know. Hey, watch it. We'll see what it feels like coming down through here.
Yeah,
Is this the catch?
Not
Is
yet.
this the catch? Oh, no, they went for Matthews again.
This was when Brandon Browner was still pretty good. You described
No,
Harold
it wasn't,
Simon as,
Steve.
he was good this year because
No,
they just asked him to cover tall receivers. That's what he
was
did.
like -1 WAR the next year for New Orleans. This is literally Belichick telling a guy to do one thing, which he's really good at, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you just lock up the slow guy in the team.
Watch him keep up with him. Like, he was not super slow. Watch him catch up.
The Saints year was like the worst cornerback season we've ever seen. 2015.
Saints year was horrendous. I don't think he was that good this year either.
Yeah, he was just Belichick just has this way, man, of putting guys. I mean, the Logan Ryan got a $10 million per year deal with Tennessee, and he's not good. Like, he just is brings out the best in players, I think.
Isn't Brandon
Logan Ryan,
Browner
bottom right here, bottom left.
had like a dark turn, I believe?
Yeah, I think he's in prison right now.
He's in prison, yeah.
Here it is.
I didn't want to speculate.
He
All
did
right,
what?
so
Curse, you got to get
And
up and
here's
score,
the
bro.
catch. Mina, are you a little behind us right now?
I'm apparently a little behind
I
you.
think she's a touch, yeah. One
Oh my
skip
God.
forward 10
No,
seconds.
that was a
might do
big
it.
play right there by Malcolm Butler just to get up and get him out of bounds. I thought he was going to score with this thing right here.
I mean, that was a great
He
play
was
by
close.
him.
You pointed that out on the broadcast, right, Chris? I mean, you were because like right here, that's a touchdown if Butler just sulks like a lot of players do.
Yeah, because he did not have possession until nobody was touching him.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
he did his best. Yeah.
so this is where my pregnant wife, starts crying and starts saying, "Not again, not again." We had, and thinking Tyree and Manningham, and can you believe this is happening again? She's texted me to remind me that this is what she was feeling. Right.
Sam
now.
over
Yeah.
the Vikings fan is rolling his eyes at this not again nonsense.
Right. It's a rough time being a Patriots fan at this point.
This goes down as one of the matches in Super Bowl history with a different outcome, and now it's totally lost. I mean, no one remembers how insane this was.
Well, yeah, it's
Look
like
at
the
Fred
Julio
in
Jones
the truck
catch.
digging up Tyree.
It is like.
Well, that's
Julio
one,
Jones
and
was
then
one of the
the
greatest
other
catches.
one was
So Fred
The
just had this
Hightower-
queued up at the end. Fred just has that
our,
queued up.
our guys can get to anything, anytime. They're unbelievable.
That's crazy.
Sherman over here, who is too smart to let his guard down.
Yet.
Paul Allen just mouth breathing in the corner there. Brutal.
Right there. If he pops up right there, he scores. But then
Yeah, I
you take
think
Brady
he's-
at minute 6.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point.
And
So
this is
they're
the
in
play you're
that.
talking about, Chris. This is Hightower,
Yep.
4-yard gain, and he
This is
barely
an
makes the tackle.
unbelievable play by Hightower. Watch him the whole way.
Yeah, it's probably the most important tackle in Patriots history, you would think.
You saw him show Russell Okung they're going to replay it. I mean, Hightower is responsible for so many key moments in every Pat Super Bowl he's played in.
Yeah. Here it is.
Ugh.
The jam by Browner is still a thing to behold.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I think I'm was
Crazy.
Browner makes that play.
Mina, we looked it up that year. They ran this exact concept, not always on the goal line, but the exact concept 5 times the entire year. 1 for 5 with a 2-yard check down on this play.
But I would definitely pass it again.
Team pass is not looking good right now. Just an
I stand
incredible
by
play.
process.
We had the answers to the test and we still got it wrong.
The fact that Butler actually caught that ball is absolutely mind-blowing. Like making the
This is
pass
not-
breakup would be one of the best
Yeah,
plays in Super Bowl history. Picking it off is just, it's beyond absurd.
This is like the
And
offensive.
so let's take it a step further. If he doesn't give up the other play, right? If he doesn't, and he's not mad about giving up the other one, is he this aggressive and that wild-eyed making that play? Because, I mean,
point.
emotions, whether anybody wants to talk about it or not, emotions are a huge part of playing football. And every once in a while, you give up a bad play and you feel like you personally have to go win the game at that point. And he just said, screw
there's
it,
a
I'm
lot of-
going. I'm just
there's
hitting
a lot
this
of
thing.
guys-
Let's go.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that do their best things the moment after screwing something up.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Richard Sherman's face. What I was trying to say is like everyone talks about the call, the throw, pass, whatever, so much more than they talk about what is one of the single most amazing defensive plays I've ever seen in a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because it's not about play calling. It's not. I mean, it's just like it's about execution.
There's never been anything like that.
I think that play should be open, and it wasn't because two guys on the Patriots out-executed the Seahawks.
Watch this play here, though. This is what I was talking about.
Right. So here's the thing. How can they run this play and not give up yardage?
Well, I think they sneak.
Belichick said these guys are wild men on every snap of every play in a game. And he talked about sort of this very situation at the end of the game, backed up, and he goes, "We'll be fighting for our lives if you ever have to get off your own goal line." Look at this.
Mina, you tweeted out today that you're going to do this for charity. You didn't want to do it. You're doing it for charity. Was it all worth it?
Yes, we raised.
No.
It was not as bad as I remembered, to be honest. And I feel, for those who are watching, even more validated than ever in my belief that passing was right.
That pass.
More validated.
Not that pass.
Yeah, so look at the play. Look at the play, though, because Curse, the guy on the point? He is supposed to be taking Browner into Butler. That should be open, and it isn't because Browner just kills him at the line.
But you also have, at best case scenario, right? Best case scenario, you've got a smaller quarterback who has to throw it from as high a release as he can, even if it doesn't get tipped at the line of scrimmage. At best, you're going to have an upper chest around the helmet kind of catch that you're going to have to make. I remember this fight. This was wild. And things happen. I mean, it's hard to catch balls when you're as nervous and Super Bowl's on the line and you get it up above the head area. And it's tough.
But wow. Wilson did nothing wrong. It was the wide receivers.
Right, perfect pass, exactly where it should be. The pass it should have been open, and it wasn't because the two guys got out executed by the two DBs.
I forgot about Bruce Irvin killing him. He was so chippy.
Chris, for NFL 100, they ranked every player and all the plays and all that stuff. Like, this has to be a top 5 play of all time. I don't know where it landed, but I don't think it was even in the top 5 or 10. It's because you just don't see plays like this that finish a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the play, the San Antonio Holmes play in the back of the end zone, right? That was pretty amazing. But this one, to me, especially the underdog story of this whole thing, and then you take it on top of that, what happened when they played the Eagles in the next Super Bowl? They bench him before the beginning of the game, and he's in tears, and it's like this guy's had 1,000 lifetimes in the NFL with Belichick.
Chris, why do you think
this is?
Do you have a theory?
Why do I think what?
Why do you think Butler was
benched
in the next Super Bowl?
That's a really good question. I don't think he was having a great year. And I think is Belichick looked at it, and obviously he didn't tell us, beforehand what was going on. So I think he decided to play his best player. If there was something beyond that, I never heard it. And in general, you can't contain that kind of a story. If there was something that, I mean, you tell me, you're the reporter. You tell me, could you keep a story that if there was some other ulterior motive to Belichick bench him at that point, could you possibly keep that under wraps?
I would say that about 31 teams in the NFL, it would be impossible. Oh, God.
But then he goes to a new team, so if it were something else, wouldn't you say it at that point?
If he was wronged, I think we would know. It would probably have gotten out. Yeah. I do love
Yeah,
LeGarrette
so-
Blount. I'm so glad I was not.
I've never seen a team more internally destroyed by a decision than this one. I mean, there's no question that between Marshawn and Richard and all those guys, this one, it just came apart.
And this spurred the second part of the dynasty for New England. It was a crazy game.
Well, you flip this around, right? So let's say they score, whatever it is, they score a touchdown. So now they've won 2 Super Bowls in a row. There isn't any off-season controversy. They're all talking about three-peating. They're all doing the same thing. They're not having secret meetings in LA and Hawaii or wherever they were all doing their kumbayas together at the end of the thing. Right? You don't have all the controversy between Richard and the coaches, and you just wonder if that one play went the other way, what happened to Seattle over the next 4 or 5 years?
Jimmy G doesn't start a couple games for Brady, who's suspended, doesn't get to play for the Niners. All kinds of stuff, right? Does Deflategate blow over if the Patriots don't even win this game?
No.
That's a good question. I don't know.
I would like to say, I think even if Seattle won this game, the dynasty would have been dissolved by the fact that all of their talented players were injured over the next 2 years and they lost the Legion of Boom. I do believe everything we're talking about matters a great deal. But whenever people talk to me about the Seahawks and how they weren't able to keep their window going because they paid Russell Wilson, I always say nothing mattered more than the injuries to the Legion of Boom and some of those defensive stars, and like Averill, and that's really why they never reached it again.
They were also in a stretch where they hit on so many draft picks, and Bobby Wagner becomes a star, and Sherman becomes a star. Not as a first rounder. I mean, they hit on Russell Wilson at the third. The things that are just not sustainable from a team building standpoint. Gave up a bunch of first rounders along the way as they're going to try to get Jimmy Graham and build their team different ways, and you just can't sustain drafting the way that they did.
And low cost free agents. I mean, Bennett and Averill, probably the greatest combined free agent signing in recent NFL history.
Well, then they kind of went on tilt after that, right? Like they kind of after Harvin and then Graham and then. They traded a bunch of their draft picks, right? Sheldon Richardson just wasn't, what they weren't able to recreate it because they didn't even try, kind of thing. In terms of the only first round pick they had for like a 5-year stretch was Jermaine Ifedi.
Right, and the early picks just haven't worked out. I mean, like you said, they just haven't drafted super well. They've drafted okay. It hasn't been disastrous, but it's not been. There was a period from like 2013 through 2016 where there were a lot of misses.
And for the Patriots, this was Super Bowl 1 out of 4, right, in the next 5 years. And they just finally fell apart.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for including me.
Glad you were a part of it. That was great.
I tried to find my Richard.
That was good.
So went with the class.
What's the second worst sports moment in Seattle history?
I would say the second worst moment was the Seattle Mariners for the last 15 years of my life, Chris. That would be up there.
When they released me in 2010.
You were part of the Mariners already? Wow.
For about 2 months.
That explains a lot.
Right?
Losing the Sonics. This hurt me more than losing the Sonics because I care more about the Seahawks, but it's pretty rough. I mean, I guess the worst officiated game in NFL history would be the second worst moment.
Oh yeah, that Super Bowl was, and that was that Al and John Madden's last Super Bowl, or was it another one?
Yeah. Yeah,
But that game was so bad. Jeremy Stevens catching like 4 touchdown passes, but 3 of them getting called back or some crazy thing like that. It was Darrell Jackson pushing off in the end zone. And then Big Ben literally playing the worst game of his career and still winning a ring was. I'm upset about that game, and I'm not even a Seahawks fan.
Thank you.
Well, let's fire that one up next week.
It's all that matters.
Bye, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, everyone who didn't watch, thank you so much. Your money's going to go a really long way in Seattle, where it's sorely needed right now.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks for doing that, Nina. And thank you to everybody who donated.
Appreciate it.
Carol Neville did nothing wrong.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the watch along. First one we've done. We've had a lot of fun here. We'll try to do it again. Grab another great game, maybe one, that Chris called again, so we can always critique Chris's color commentary.
Well, you can't even hear it though.
Did we get a winner? What was the winner's name for the second half? We had the wide receiver that was drafted just ahead of Chris. I believe he knows that he won out of the YouTube chat. So free PFF Edge subscription, including the PFF draft guide. It's all sorted. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let's do it again soon. Get to PFF.com for all your great NFL news all week. Thanks, guys.